It's been 20 years since Lee Hyun-seok was dragged from Earth into this fantasy world. Today is the day he finally settles the score with the big bad. He's here to save the world and finally find a way back home. A massive explosion rocks the battlefield as the two powers collide. Through the smoke, two glowing red eyes stare back with pure malice. The Demon King laughs, surprised the puny human actually survived that hit. His party members, the Saintess, the Mage, and the Knight, are barely holding on in the back. Hyun-seok doesn't look much better, bloodied and breathing heavy. The monster isn't done yet, charging up a purple blast of energy. Hyun-seok tightens his grip and readies himself for the next strike. They collide again in a flurry of sparks and steel. The power from their clash sends the rest of the party flying back. The Demon King bellows, threatening to tear the hero limb from limb. He claims this whole land is his kingdom, forged by his own teeth and claws. Hyun-seok just stares him down, completely unfazed by the threat. Another blinding explosion tears through the ruins of the palace. Hands bloodied, he grips his spear with everything he has left. He's done with the talk. It's time to end this fight once and for all. A spark ignites in the center of the chaos. He charges straight through the fire, eyes locked on his target. He delivers a strike that whites out the entire area with blinding light. He finally unleashes his trump card, the Paradox Flame. He leaps through the falling debris of the crumbling throne room. He sticks the landing as the ground shatters under the pressure. A beam of light pierces through the darkness of the battlefield. It's a pure battle of wills between the hero and the monster. The impacts carved countless massive death craters into the cliffs and deep into the earth. He and the Demon King clashed incessantly across the demon realm, the ear-splitting roars of their collision echoing through the void. With his massive claws, he tried to crush him and end the fight with nothing but pure, raw power. But Hyun-seok didn't give him a single opening, instantly parrying the strike with ease. He skids back, using his spear to steady himself against the shockwaves. The Demon King mocks him, calling his attacks soft and useless. Hyun-seok just looks at his hand and smirks. "Soft," he says. He stands tall as the monster looms over him for what he hopes is the last time. He tells the beast that he's about to cut that arrogance down to size. A sudden column of dark, intense fire erupts from the ground. A piece of the Demon King's crown falls into the dirt, broken. The black flames begin to eat away at the monster's very existence. Hyun-seok listens as the beast starts rambling about his supposed immortality. He looks the monster in the eye and drops the truth. He's not from this world at all. The Demon King keeps talking nonsense about regenerating from the land itself. But then he realizes something is horribly wrong. This fire isn't just burning his body. The Demon King is panicking, asking if he's actually being erased. Hyun-seok just looks on, noticing the monster can't regenerate anymore. He explains that this Paradox Flame isn't some ordinary fire, it's his special trump card. While normal fire needs oxygen, this black flame uses abstract concepts as its fuel. Right now, it's straight up devouring the Demon King's very existence. The beast realizes his time is up, but he tries to get one last dig in, saying Hyun-seok will never be remembered as a hero. Behind him, his so-called party members just stood there watching, while the Demon King continued his taunts. Those vultures were simply waiting for him to drop dead so they could swoop in and loot his remains. He turns around and simply says, "I know." The entire party is absolutely floored. The Saintess, his blonde party healer, tries to play dumb and tells him not to believe a monster's lies. Hyun-seok doesn't buy it. He calls her out on the seduction routine, knowing she secretly despises him for being an outsider. He knows her plan was to make him hesitate when it came time for the group to purge him. He gets right in her face and asks if he's wrong. The Saintess just glares back, her mask of innocence finally slipping away. He tells them the other two are exactly the same. The Knight, a man with spiky dark hair, was promised a treasure by the Emperor to kill the hero and protect the throne. And then there's the Mage, a bearded old man who hates Hyun-seok for opposing the slavery system he uses for his experiments. He reveals he's known about their assassination plot for the past 5 years. The Demon King was struck with pure confusion upon hearing those words. even as his body continued to dissolve into the flames. He asks why Hyun-seok didn't just burn down this whole world after it turned its back on him. Hyun-seok simply tells him he didn't do it, because he just wanted to go home. The monster can't believe what he's hearing. You want to go home. This all started 20 years ago, back in 2005 on Earth. He was just an ordinary office worker in his 30s, until a goddess pulled him into this world. It sounds like one of those cheesy stories about a regular guy becoming a legend in another world. But the reality was a total disaster of death and screaming. He was told there was only one way back: defeat the monsters and save the world. So for 2 decades, he trained and fought his way through this hellscape. He looks back at the people he saved, not exactly a grateful bunch. He carried a dying child back to a village, but the response was anything but heroic. The locals just complained that it was a waste of good medicine to save the kid. This world was unbelievably cruel, often just abandoning the wounded to die. A man screams as he faces the care of this medieval society. Doctors with no concept of hygiene would just hack off limbs for a simple infection. He saw them amputating a kid's leg because all the healers were busy at the front lines. He stared at the scene, his eyes going cold and dead. But the real horror was what happened next. A priestess smiles while people are burned alive in the background. They called it an exorcism. They told him to cast aside his pity if he wanted salvation. He grew to loathe these people and their lack of human rights. He endured this nightmare for 20 long years. Back in the present, he screams at the sky that he's finished the mission. He demands the goddess keep her end of the deal as a column of light descends. A massive flash of light engulfs him as he prepares to leave this world behind forever. The goddess appears in a burst of light, congratulating the hero on his arduous victory over the Demon King. Hyun-seok ignores the praise and reminds her of their deal. Once the job was done, he'd be sent back to Earth with his soul and memories intact. A small, cryptic smile plays on the goddess's lips as she listens to his demand. She asks if he truly wants to give up his godlike power and status, warning him that all his legendary achievements will become void on Earth. Hyun-seok just lets out a dry, cynical laugh at the thought of caring about his achievements. He tells her to stop the act, knowing she's just relieved that the world's strongest monster is finally leaving. The goddess looks at him one last time, asking if he's absolutely certain he won't regret this decision. He drops his weapons into the dirt, declaring that his only desire is to return to the world he once knew. The spears clatter to the ground, a final sign of his retirement as the savior of this world. "Very well," she says. Hyun-seok breathes a sigh of relief as he prepares to leave this god-forsaken place behind. He looks down at his scarred, battle-worn hands, reminders of 20 years of constant suffering. A brilliant column of golden light descends, engulfing him as the transportation process begins. But then she adds a catch. His original body on Earth is long dead, so his soul will be placed into a new vessel. Hyun-seok's eyes widen in confusion. Whose body am I going into? The goddess remains cryptic, only saying that the body is one fated for a wretched end. Still, she's confident that a man who survived this world will have no trouble surviving a bad fate on Earth. Hyun-seok doesn't care about the risk. As long as it's Earth, he's willing to face whatever harsh fate awaits. His form begins to dissolve into the light as he makes his final resolve to leave his past behind. Whatever life he wakes up to, he knows it has to be better than the 20-year nightmare he just escaped. A slow blink as eyes flutter open. Lee Hyun-seok wakes up in a sunlit room. He can't believe he's actually back. He's taken over the body of a guy named Yu Chan-seok. It's Earth, the year 2025. He looks at his hands, glad to be far away from those backstabbing heroes in the other world. He spots a mirror, finally a clear reflection. Touching his new face, he accepts his new identity. He hugs the mirror, overwhelmed that he's really home. Splashing his face with tap water feels like a miracle. No more contaminated junk. This is the real magic. He stares at the gas stove's flame. Fire with just a button press is way better than any mage's campfire. He sets a box down on the table. This is what he missed most. Fried chicken. He stares at it like it's a pile of gold. He takes a massive, desperate bite. He sits on the floor, devouring the meal in silence. It tastes so good he starts to choke up. This is what real food is supposed to be. Tears stream down his face as he realizes how much he's missed everything about Earth. He looks out at the city, ready to start a normal life. Seeing the date, he realizes time moved here too. It's already 2025. A red beam shoots into the sky outside, but he doesn't care. Nothing could be worse than the hell he just left. He turns on the shower. Hot water pours down instantly. He doesn't have to wait for a fire or carry buckets. He clicks on the air conditioner, savoring the immediate blast of cold air. Looking out the window, he admires the bright sky. It's a far cry from that nasty fantasy world. He wonders what to do first, maybe start with some StarCraft. Suddenly, a monster with a creepy white mask lunges at him. He reels back in shock, heart racing. An emergency broadcast blares, announcing a corrosion rift right in the apartment complex. He can't believe what he's hearing. The world he fought so hard to return to is falling apart. A monster's eye glints with hunger. Dozens of those masked, monkey-like creatures are crawling up the side of the building, laughing. A clawed hand smashes through the glass. He bolts from his apartment into the dark hallway. He runs as fast as he can, hearing the monsters right behind him. He glances back, wondering what the hell these things even are. A pack of them chases him down the stairs. He screams internally, questioning what happened to Earth. He scrambles out a window onto a different staircase to lose them. He pauses to catch his breath, hoping he's finally safe. He spots a young boy standing in the corridor. He tells the kid to get to a shelter, but the boy just asks where the monster went. The kid looks up with dead serious eyes and says he's going to kill it, even asking if Lee Hyun-seok wants to come along. Lee Hyun-seok stares at him, completely baffled. The boy drops the worst news possible. Earth has been infested with monsters for 13 years. Lee Hyun-seok couldn't just let the kid wander off alone, so he ends up tagging along. The boy seems oddly used to this terrifying reality. He explains that no one knows where these corrosion rifts come from or when they'll show up next. Lee Hyun-seok is fuming. He survived 20 years in a medieval hellhole just to return to a post-apocalyptic one. He curses the goddess for giving him such a raw deal. When the boy asks why he's so clueless, he quickly lies and says he's been living in America. The kid starts babbling about how the US president got impeached for a secret family scandal. Lee Hyun-seok tries to change the subject, asking about the kid's favorite hunter instead. The kid excitedly babbled about a top-tier hunter named Lee Si-yoon who wields a massive greatsword. And of course, this hunter is a total waifu material, absolutely stunning enough to make anyone drool. Lee Hyun-seok wonders how normal humans could possibly stand a chance against these monsters. He realizes Earth might be more like the other world than he thought. The kid tries to pull up a video, but Lee Hyun-seok shuts him up before they're discovered. He senses the enemies nearby. A pack of masked creatures is lurking further down the hallway. He counts 5 of them in plain sight, with one more hiding in the shadows. He notices his new body has some decent strength, but he's still at a disadvantage. The kid starts to tremble, his earlier bravado completely gone. Lee Hyun-seok is used to being outnumbered, but he's currently without a weapon. Then he feels it. The air is thick with mana, just like the world he escaped. If there's mana here, then he isn't completely helpless. One of the monsters lunges at them with a wide, toothy grin. Suddenly, the creature is engulfed in a strange, dark fire. His 20 years of mana might be gone, but the paradox flame is still engraved on his soul. The output is weak compared to his prime, but it still turns the monster to ash. The beast was erased in an instant, leaving only gray smoke. The kid stood there jaw-dropped, calling him a superpowered old man. The boy's eyes sparkle with wonder, calling it a unique skill. Suddenly, the kid remembers something from a YouTube channel and runs off to confirm the kill. Lee Hyun-seok stares at his hand, realizing that the flames of the paradox flame have followed him even here. Suddenly, a monster lunged forward with a twisted, manic grin, just as a command for the boy to stay put rang out. A strike connects, sending a spray of dark fluid across the room. Yoon watches, frozen in fear as the fight unfolds right in front of him. Yu Chanseok wipes his hand, completely unfazed by the gore on his skin. He looks back and tells the kid he should probably stop watching. Then he asks to borrow the toy staff the boy is clutching. He takes the plastic staff and readies his stance. Massive shadows of more creatures loom over the pair as they close in. Chanseok's eyes narrow with lethal intent. He delivers a powerful strike that creates a massive shockwave. The entire pack of monsters was shredded into pieces, with just a few basic moves from our MC. Yoon stares in awe at the man who just saved his life. The kid asks if he's a secret hunter, but the man just sighs. Looking at the blood-soaked floor, Chanseok's expression darkens. He fought through hell for years just to return to this same stench on Earth. It feels like this world is no different from the hellscape he escaped. People in the shelter start to stir, whispering about the sudden fight. A heavy metal door groans as it begins to slide open. Chanseok walks alongside the kid, teasing him about being a little brat. A woman's panicked voice rings out, screaming Yoonseong's name. His mother rushes over and hugs him, thanking Chanseok for his help. Seeing her luxury items, he realizes he just rescued a rich kid. Suddenly, a deafening boom shakes the entire shelter. A massive blackened fist smashes right through the shelter wall. Debris flies everywhere as a giant monster breaks into the safe zone. The creature lets out a bone-chilling screech that echoes through the room. Chaos breaks out as everyone starts screaming for their lives. Yoonseong tells him they have to escape, but Chanseok looks drained. He didn't ask for much, just a bit of peace and quiet. He clenches his hand, the memories of war clearly haunting him. His palm is covered in old scars and fresh grime from the struggle. Chanseok looks down at the boy standing beside him. He tells the kid to just stay safe and use his money to live comfortably. Yoonseong doesn't budge, his face set in a serious frown. He reveals that a monster took his father from him in a bunker. That's when he realized there is no such thing as a safe place anymore. He declares that he's going to become the strongest and save everyone. As the boy declared his vow to protect the world, Chanseok gazed into the fierce determination burning in the kid's eyes. He tells the boy he'll definitely become a great hunter. But as he walks away, he tells him he won't be the one saving the world. His mother pulls him away, urging him to leave before things get worse. Yoonseong is dragged off, his eyes still fixed on his mysterious savior. The boy shouts after him, still reeling from the man's display of power. He stares in disbelief at the man's retreating back. Chanseok walks away without a second look, declaring that he's the one who will save the world. The kid stands there in silence, completely awestruck. Chanseok believes world saving is a job for someone who's actually done it before. He spent 20 years fighting for survival in another world before finally making it back to Earth. He used his battle instincts to survive the initial rifts, even promising to be a hero. But since then, he's done nothing but rot in front of a computer screen. He stares blankly at the victory screen after a long gaming session. He mutters that it was too easy while casually chewing on an energy jelly. He cracks open a cold soda can with a practiced click. The idea of being a repeat savior feels more like a burden than an honor to him. His ambition to save the world evaporated the moment he discovered modern food and high-speed internet. Why fight monsters when you can have anything delivered with a single touch? He figures the professional hunters can handle the rifts while he browses a delivery menu. Reality hits hard when he sees he only has 3,201 left in his bank account. It turns out the original owner of his body lost his job when the economy tanked. With his severance pay gone, finding a regular job in this climate is impossible. The constant rift attacks have driven most companies out of business. No one is hearing, and he's starting to worry about how he'll even survive. Then a hunter recruitment ad flashes on his phone and catches his eye. He figures he has plenty of experience in that field as he heads toward the Hunter Association headquarters. Candidates flock to the hunter selection venue, buzzing with excitement about their future careers. Some of them think the whole test is just a formality. As long as you show off a unique skill, you're basically in. An observer watches the crowd with a bored expression. To them, these recruits look like a bunch of small fries. Suddenly, the crowd splits as someone walks through. One candidate asks if they're about to get famous. Another guy stops mid-praise, his eyes going wide as he looks toward the entrance. He's in total shock. Lee Si-yoon is actually here. The place erupts in whispers. Seeing the 10th ranked hunter in the world from the Janabi Guild isn't a daily occurrence. Everyone wondering why she's here instead of out on a mission. They figure she must be scouting someone special. Lee Si-yoon takes her seat, ignoring the commotion around her. She opens a profile on her tablet for Han Sang-a, a top academy graduate with electrokinesis. Her colleague jokes that her power would be great for charging batteries, but Si-yoon just gives him a look. She's looking for real talent. The scout thinks the girl will be useful regardless, though Si-yoon doesn't seem fully convinced yet. Another official shouts about how rift hunting is the only real form of combat. He offers Si-yoon some candy, while explaining that academy performance doesn't always hold up in a real fight. He believes it takes a long time for safe-trained students like Han Sang-a to adapt to the life-or-death reality of the rifts. The announcer takes the mic and welcomes everyone. It's time for the first match to kick off. Si-yoon puts her pipe down and smiles. Hopping at least one person makes it worth her time. Up in the booth, the commentator notices a weird entry in the lineup. There's a civilian candidate on the list who doesn't even have an academy background. It's completely unprecedented for the selection test. The crowd watches as he steps into the spotlight, wondering what kind of guts this guy has. Candidate Yu Chan-seok walks out, though he's still not quite used to his new name. The announcer runs through the rules. Use the provided weapons and try not to kill anyone. Chan-seok looks on. He's decided that if he's going to be a hunter, he might as well save this doomed world while he's at it. His opponent, a blonde guy with a spear, just smirks. He can't believe he has to fight a nobody. Simultaneously, Chan-seok reminds himself that he needs to win this if he wants to afford a decent meal. The referee signals for both candidates to take their positions. The fight starts, and the blonde guy charges in immediately. Chan-seok stays perfectly still, as his opponent tells him to consider it an honor to lose. Flames burst from the spear as the guy brags about being the Academy's master of the weapon. He even mocks Chan-seok for having no mana. Chan-seok's eyes narrowed, closely tracking the flashy, pathetic moves unfolding before him. Without a single word, he slammed his spearhead deep into the ground. Using this weapon would definitely be overkill for these puny rookies. The blonde guy is baffled. His target just vanished into thin air. He spins around, searching for where Chan-seok went. But Chan-seok is already right behind him. He casually tells the kid his spear work is pretty clumsy. A punch connects with a heavy thud. Chan-seok drives his fist forward, putting his full weight into the strike. Then he followed up with a brutal uppercut. The impact distorted the blonde guy's face as blood and spit sprayed everywhere. He's knocked out cold before his body even hits the ground. Chan-seok stands over him, surprised the match ended so quickly. He actually used his bare hands because he thought using a weapon would probably kill the guy. He wonders if this is really the standard for modern hunters. Lee Si-yoon watches from the stands, her eyes wide with shock. This civilian rookie just did something impossible. The scouts go over Yu Chan-seok's profile, nodding his previous job at a logistics company. They're baffled that he has almost no mana in his body. One of them figures he must have just been lucky so far. To generate that much power, he'd normally need to have been accumulating mana for years. He gets a candy shoved into his mouth by Lee Si-yoon as a way to tell him to pipe down. Si-yoon watches the screen, realizing that the guy isn't just low on mana. He's intentionally avoiding it. Back in the arena, Chan-seok scratches his neck. He knows he needs a decisive win to really prove what he's capable of. That blonde guy somehow scrambled back to his feet, his jaw trembling as he stammered in utter disbelief. How? How is this even possible? Chan-seok assures him it won't be a fatal wound, as he delivers a blindingly fast strike. The academy student is left with a look of pure terror, unable to comprehend the speed he's witnessing. The guy hits the floor hard as the announcer declares Yu Chanseok the winner of the round. The crowd is buzzing. They can't believe a civilian just walked in and dominated an academy elite. Lee Si-yoon's eyes stay fixed on the rookie. She's seen enough to know this isn't just luck. Other scouts are already losing interest in the rest of the matches, seeing the massive gap in skill. Si-yoon stands up. While everyone else is still busy evaluating his stats, she's ready to make a move to see his real potential. She heads out to find the association president, leaving her confused colleagues behind. Meanwhile, Chanseok continues to dismantle his opponents. He's starting to get bored, thinking these hunters are surprisingly weak. He finds that no matter who they throw at him, they're all around the same mediocre level. He wonders what on earth they're actually teaching at the Hunter Academy, if this is the best they can produce. He sighs, hoping there's at least one person here who can give him a decent challenge. His wish is granted when the crowd starts cheering for the next contender. The spectators are hyped. They've been waiting for the top student to finally step into the ring. The grand finale is announced. It's the Academy's star pupil, Han Sang-ah. Chanseok watches her approach. He can feel the shift in energy. Over the intercom, the MC announced that she had accumulated the most mana of the day, while he just stood there with nothing but his bare hands. She tells him his luck has run out, but Chanseok just finds her trash talk incredibly generic. She draws her sword, assuming that because he only uses his fists, he doesn't have a unique skill. Her eyes glow with power as she warns him she won't be going easy. Chanseok thinks to himself that he does have a unique skill. He just isn't using it because she'd probably get hurt. The referee gives the signal to start. Sang-ah takes a low stance, electricity crackling around her body. She grips her hilt, preparing her signature high-speed draw technique. Chanseok stays focused, his eyes tracking the surge of mana. There's a massive explosion of light as she unleashes her attack. Sang-ah is stunned when she realizes her blade hit nothing but empty air. Chanseok had jumped high into the sky, dodging the lightning strike effortlessly. She stares up in disbelief, wondering how a human could have the reaction time to dodge that. Chanseok finds the whole thing interesting. He recognizes that she's using an electric current to turn her scabbard and blade into a magnetic railgun. He lands gracefully and explains that while her skills are the best he's seen so far, she's missing the most important part of combat. Sang-ah is speechless. She was so focused on raw speed that she didn't realize how predictable her path had become. He points out that by laying down a magnetic rail in the air, she basically showed him exactly where she was going to attack. He tells her that no matter how powerful a strike is, only an idiot would telegraph their path so clearly. Furious, Sang-ah tells him not to get cocky as she prepares to charge again. She yells that she can beat him even without using that specific technique, pouring everything she has into a direct assault. Yu Chanseok dodges the attack effortlessly, mocking her for taking such a predictable path despite her speed. Han Sang-ah's eyes glow with a desperate intensity as she tries to force her body to output even more electrical energy. A violent explosion of green lightning tears through the arena as she unleashes a final, reckless strike. Chanseok analyzes the flow of her energy, noticing that she's destroying her own body just to scrape together a bit more mana. He decides to step in and end it, telling her that they've seen enough and it's time to stop. He moves with a predatory calm, advising her to signal if the pain gets to be too much. He strikes with blinding speed, catching her off guard and shattering her momentum. Sang-ah cries out in shock and pain as she finally experiences the gap between their true abilities. Chanseok clenches his fist, preparing to deliver the finishing blow to the Academy's star pupil. He lands a series of heavy, physical strikes that mana-based defenses can't seem to block. A single, powerful punch is thrown with perfect form, aimed directly at her center. The force of the impact sends a shockwave through the floor of the ring. Han Sang-ah is left completely dazed, her face bloodied and her eyes blank as she loses consciousness. She hits the ground hard, her pride and her body equally broken by the unexpected defeat. The audience and the judges are stunned into silence, struggling to process the fall of the Academy's top student. They're all left with the same burning question: where did someone with this level of power come from? Chanseok walks away, concluding that while she had talent, she relied too much on mana and neglected her physical training. He pauses as he hears a faint groan, wondering if she's actually trying to get back up after that. A trembling hand slowly rises from the floor, reaching up in a gesture of surrender. The official quickly moves in to check on her, as she officially signals her defeat. Yu Chanseok looks pretty pleased with himself, nodding that his opponent actually followed his instructions to raise her hand if she was in pain. In the middle of the empty arena, the defeated student lies on the floor while staff head over to check on her. Up in the stands, the high-ranking hunters are losing their minds over what they just saw. The announcer jumps on the mic, screaming for everyone's attention because the tournament schedule just got flipped upside down. He tells Chanseok to take a quick breather, which just leaves our guy looking confused about why things aren't over yet. Then comes the bombshell. A special match is being set up right now between the rookie winner and an active pro hunter. Apparently, the association president personally gave the green light for this sudden showdown. The crowd goes absolutely wild as a new name flashes on the monitors that only they can see. Chanseok narrows his eyes, wondering if this pro is stepping up just to test what he's really made of. A massive heavy blade slams into the arena floor, kicking up sparks and dust. A woman with long black hair steps into view, apologizing for showing up without any warning. It's Lee Si-yoon from the Janabi Guild, and she's not here just to watch from the sidelines. She tells him the stage has been a bit too small for his skills and asks for a match herself. She gives him an out, saying he can walk away if it's too much of a surprise, but her eyes say otherwise. Chanseok can feel the massive aura coming off her. This isn't some academy student, she's a world-ranked pro. He just cracks a small, confident smile. The announcer is barely keeping it together, realizing the match is starting right this second. Si-yoon looks fired up, admitting she hasn't even broken a sweat yet and wants to see what he's really hiding. As the previous opponent is carried off on a stretcher, Chanseok realizes this is the perfect chance to skyrocket his value. He picks up a simple training spear from the ground. With a smirk, he gets into a combat stance, ready to see how he measures up against Earth's best. The spectators are leaning forward in their seats, barely able to believe what they're seeing. The announcer is sweating bullets as the tension in the room hits a breaking point. Si-yoon doesn't hold back, swinging that massive hunk of metal with terrifying speed. Chanseok grits his teeth as he barely manages to parry the heavy blow. The sheer power behind her swing is nearly too much for his current body to handle. She keeps the pressure on, forcing him to stay on the defensive against her relentless strikes. With one final, powerful shove, he managed to push her back to slow down the pace of the fight. Her expression is dead serious now. She's definitely not treating this like a simple exhibition match. Chanseok is panting, realizing his mind sees the openings but his physical stats just can't keep up. After 30 minutes of clashing, she stops to praise him for holding out much longer than she expected. She digs her heel into the ground, preparing for a more serious move. "I'll make it easy for you," she says, raising her sword high for a finishing strike. Chanseok looks down at his spear, nodding he has practically no mana stored up. He takes a deep breath, trying to steady his heart. He didn't want to use it this early, but he realizes he doesn't have a choice anymore. His eyes sharpen as he whispers the name of a skill from his past life, Paradox Flame. Si-yoon's eyes go wide as she senses a sudden, terrifying shift in the air. She slams her sword down with everything she's got, but Chanseok is already gone, dodging the impact by a hair. Dust fills the arena as she looks back, stunned that her certain kill strike missed completely. She knows she used enough force that he shouldn't have been able to dodge it. Chanseok stands there, his clothes torn and a strange, dark blue flame beginning to flicker around his body. Paradox Flame. The dark fire begins to slowly envelop his entire body. It's the power he relied on most before returning to Earth, a specialty he trusts completely. Unlike normal fire, this black flame doesn't burn matter, which is why his clothes stay untouched. Instead, it consumes abstract concepts that he designates as fuel. With his current low output, he can't burn complex concepts like self or reason just yet. So the one concept he chooses to burn right now is. Lee Si-yoon's eyes widen as she realizes he's suddenly gotten much faster. He zips through the arena, burning away his own fatigue. She's stunned that he managed to fully recover in such a short amount of time. Their weapons clash with a heavy metallic ring, sending sparks flying everywhere. She can feel the mana in the air fluctuating wildly, wondering if the arena's settings have glitched. He explains that just as fire releases heat, his paradox flame releases mana as it burns through abstract concepts. It's a perfect cycle. He uses mana to light the flame, and the flame burns his exhaustion to create more mana. He plants his foot, ready for the next move. This endless loop is what makes him so dangerous. Si-yoon slams her massive sword down, shattering the floor as he narrowly dodges. She's starting to get annoyed, asking if he really plans to keep this up. She compares him to a pest that grabs onto someone's leg and won't let go. For Chan Si-ok, this has turned into a brutal war of attrition. He flashes a cocky grin, asking if she likes guys who don't know when to quit. Her expression is cold as she tells him she absolutely hates people like that. Just as a burning tree leaves only ashes, his paradox flame also leaves a residue behind. It's a visual trail of everything he's burned through during the fight. Once everything is turned to ash, the paradox flame will finally vanish. The clock finally hits 4 hours and 17 minutes. Chan Si-ok is flat on his back, begging for mercy while Si-yoon stands over him with her massive blade. The announcer declares Lee Si-yoon the winner after Chan Si-ok officially forfeits the exhibition match. Nearby, a recruiter reaches into his suit jacket for something. His colleagues are shocked, recognizing the special lollipop he's pulling out. Lee Si-yoon tosses the candy and her business card to Chan Si-ok as a reward for his persistence. He looks at the card, seeing she's a partner hunter for a big agency called Janabi LLC. She gives him a wink, telling him to give her a call so they can talk about the details later. The announcer wraps up the trials, calling Chan Si-ok back to the stage to receive his official winner's award. Later on, Chan Si-ok is happily crunching away on that lollipop. He's scrolling through a smartphone, amazed that a single device holds his license and an entire hunter community. He's impressed by how far technology has come until someone calls out his name. A massive, muscular man with tribal tattoos and a black shirt looms over him, saying he looks better in person. Chan Si-ok stares up at the giant, who has to be well over 2 meters tall. The man holds out a business card, and Chan Si-ok asks who the hell he is. The card identifies him as Yoon Seong-hyun, a partner hunter from the T-back Guild. Seong-hyun tells him to join his team, promising that Chan Si-ok will definitely shine under his guidance. Chan Si-ok thinks the guy seems sincere, but Si-yoon's earlier offer is still fresh in his mind. Yoon Seong-hyun tells Chan Si-ok he doesn't need an immediate answer and that he has another appointment. He lets out a boisterous laugh, wondering if Chan Si-ok thought he'd demand a decision right then and there. He places a heavy hand on Chan Si-ok's shoulder, his tone shifting. He gets close, his eyes gleaming with a menacing intensity as he tells Chan Si-ok to think it through properly. With a simple "see you around," he turns and walks away. Chan Si-ok watches him go, his mind made up instantly. He's definitely not joining T-back. Later, Chan Si-ok gives Lee Si-yoon a call to discuss her offer. She tells him she's at a place called The Hut and promises to send him the location. He arrives at the Hunter Association building and spots the sign for the cafe. A cheerful, pink-haired cafe staff greets him as he steps inside. Lee Si-yoon waves him over from a booth, nodding that he's arrived quite early. Chan Si-ok looks around the unusual cafe, wondering if something happened to make it so quiet. He sits down and tells her about the massive guy who tried to recruit him earlier. Si-yoon explains that since a titan like Yoon Seong-hyun showed interest, most other guilds wouldn't even dream of making an offer. Chan Si-ok realizes that likely applies to her guild, Janabi, as well. To his surprise, she casually mentions that she has no intention of actually recruiting him. He's taken aback, so she suggests the idea of him working as a freelancer instead. She explains that Seong-hyun was likely only going to offer him a junior position. Chan-seok admits he has no idea what junior or partner even means in this context. She breaks down the three main ranks of guild hunters: junior, senior, and partner. She explains that juniors and seniors are basically salaried employees who work under the leadership of partner hunters. A diagram shows how a guild is organized into different teams, each headed by a partner. Partners don't receive a standard salary. Instead, they have shares in the guild and function more like business owners. They take a direct cut of the net profits the guild brings in. Chan-seok notes that the structure sounds exactly like a law firm. She confirms the comparison and adds that he doesn't have to follow the traditional path to become a partner hunter. He smiles, thinking that if he just gets famous and gets results, the guilds will be the ones chasing him. She hands him another candy, which makes him wonder why she keeps feeding him sweets. He admits that as a newcomer with no connections, getting high-level requests on his own will be difficult. She leans forward with a smile, offering to help him out with that for free. He chews on the candy, still suspicious of why she's being so helpful. She explains that she's just putting him in her debt so he'll think of Janabi first when he's eventually recruited by a major guild. She pulls a document out of her bag and asks if he'd like to take a look at a potential job. It's an official request from Incheon City regarding a place called Jayadongdo Island. A corrosion zone formed there 2 years ago, and the mission is to patrol the area and eliminate any new rifts. The pay is 5 million won up front, with an additional 15 million upon completion of the 1-month task. She admits the pay isn't great considering the risk, but that's the reality for someone with his current standing. She tells him that if he wants the big money, he has to become strong enough to make it flow into his pockets. She looks him in the eye and asks for his final answer. Chan-seok starts to give his response. A luxury car speeds along a bridge as a mysterious voice asks what kind of guy he is. Inside the limo, Lee Si-yoon reports that Yu Chan-seok is a civilian who cleared a weapons tournament with nothing but his bare hands. Lee Si-yoon argues that not bad is an understatement, as Chan-seok survived 4 hours against her. The boss's voice comes from the phone, skeptically asking if she just limited her power. She retorts that she's a veteran hunter with a decade of experience. She stares out the car window, admitting that her battle-hardened experience wasn't enough to easily toy with him. She confesses that even in another life, she doubts she'd ever encounter another monster like him. The location shifts to Incheon City, Jayadongdo Island, where a group of hunters has gathered on the shoreline. The boss's voice questions the choice, nodding that the island mission specifically requested hunters with prior experience. On the beach, a serious-looking hunter with brown hair prepares for the mission alongside others. A hand confidently grips the hilt of a sword as Si-yoon tells the boss not to worry. She reveals that she's paired Chan-seok with someone truly reliable, Han Sang-ah. The boss agrees to trust her judgment as the brains of Janabi. Si-yoon smiles to herself, asking the boss what he thinks the kid will be like if he ever reaches his level. On a remote island, a towering man in a dark cloak stands, the very person Si-yoon and the boss were just talking about. The camera zooms in on Chan-seok, now decked out in brand-new gear with a gaze as sharp as a blade. Si-yoon's final thought remains a chilling warning. One day, that kid might just become strong enough to take even you down. 1 month ago, a delivery guy is trudging along, hauling a massive, oversized box on his shoulder while hunting for room 1506. A delivery man is struggling with a package that feels way too heavy. He's grumbling as he checks the next recipient on his list. He finally reaches apartment 1506. Yu Chan-seok sits in a quiet room, looking at the long, black equipment case he just received. He unlatches the case with a sharp click. His eyes lock onto the contents. Inside is a sleek black spear, finally ready for some action. He holds up a bottle of green elixir, which hunters use to replenish mana in emergencies. Most hunters draw mana from the atmosphere and store it in their bodies like water in a tank. Chan-seok's method is different. He skips the storage phase and absorbs mana directly from the air as he needs it. This gives him a huge advantage, since he's not limited by his own capacity. By constantly cycling mana, his internal channels gradually strengthen. The downside is his channels are currently too small to produce a powerful output quickly. He decides to spend the next month training with the elixir to grow his potential. Flash forward to the present, Jayadongdo Island in Incheon. A long line of hunters waits at the island's check-in point. Chanseok presents his digital license on his smartphone. The official confirms his ID and tells him he's been assigned to Squad 8. He heads over to the assembly area marked with the number 8. He joins his teammates, who are already grumbling about the pay or feeling nervous. A familiar face catches his eye. He notices Han Sang-a's hair has finally settled down after their last electric encounter in the tournament. She's in the same squad and wants to cooperate, but he's not exactly thrilled about it. She admits he's stronger and wants to learn from him, even if it's a bit embarrassing to say out loud. She tries to make a joke about his dislocating shoulders, but Chanseok is not in the mood for jokes. A staff member calls for everyone's attention. Since the whole team is gathered, he starts the mission briefing. The squad leader explains the basics for the rookies, including some common terminology. Corrosion rifts are classified by level, with Class 1 being the most dangerous threats. The primary Alpha rift on the island is located at an old church in northern Insarai. The squad's mission is to patrol the surrounding areas and identify any new rifts. The other hunters start whispering, clearly skeptical of a rookie being sent on such a high-stakes mission. The group finally arrives at the island's dock. Chanseok can feel a chilling, sinister energy radiating from the area. He steps onto the pier, thinking the others are being a bit too dramatic about it. A sharp whistle blow marks the official start of the scouting mission. They're told to report back to the offshore control room if anything goes wrong. The leader wishes them luck as they head into the field. He outlines the plan. They'll be scouting the area over the course of a week. A couple of the hunters shoot Chanseok a doubtful look. Ignoring them, Chanseok checks a map on his phone and suggests they set up their main base at Hwajiasa Temple. The squad leader, a man with glasses, looks down on Yu Chanseok. He's never seen him before and immediately assumes he's a rookie. He demands to know why they're heading to the temple. Chanseok remains calm, explaining his choice. From the Hwajiasa Temple, you can see Upnirai, and from the peak of the mountain, you can overlook Jayadongmyeon. Plus, the old temple building makes for perfect lodging. It's a clear strategic move. The squad leader and another hunter in a tank top aren't convinced. They point out there are plenty of places to stay nearby and worry about getting surrounded while climbing. Chanseok dismisses the concern, nodding they aren't exactly facing an army of thousands. Fed up, the squad leader refuses to take orders from an inexperienced hunter. Chanseok sighs to himself, realizing idiots who defy logic exist in every world. Since the team is uncooperative, he tells them to just act separately. He turns and heads into the woods. He moves through the dense brush, leaving the loud-mouthed squad leader behind. Chanseok continues deep into the forest, a spear in hand. He's not alone, though. 2 others have followed him. He expected Han Sang-a to tag along, but he wonders who the third person is. He can sense the newcomer's mana is slightly higher than hers. The man introduces himself as Kim Minji. Chanseok asks him bluntly why he followed them. Minji looks a bit caught off guard by the question. Minji explains he was worried about letting 2 rookies run off on their own. Chanseok is slightly impressed, thinking there's at least one decent person in this group. Suddenly, Chanseok's expression sharpens. He detects something ahead. He skids to a sudden halt, his boots kicking up a cloud of dust. He holds up a hand, telling them both to wait. Minji and Sang-a look surprised by the sudden stop. Chanseok signals them to be quiet and take a peek over the ridge. They're clearly approaching something dangerous. Minji carefully peers over the rocks, his eyes widening in shock. In a clearing below, dozens of monstrous, green-skinned corrosion creatures are gathered. Minji whispers urgently that they should take a detour. There are way too many of them, at least 50. Chanseok tells him to keep it down and asks what his unique skill is. Minji is flabbergasted, asking if Chanseok is actually considering a fight. Chanseok looks him dead in the eye, stating that fighting monsters is exactly what hunters do. He asks again for Minji's most confident skill. Minji reluctantly reveals his specialty is fire, specifically fireball. Good, Chanseok says. He tells Minji to attack first as soon as he gives the signal. Minji's jaw drops. What should I do? Minji asks, panicking as he looks at Han Sang-ah. He can't believe she's going along with this madness. He argues that taking on 50 monsters with just the 3 of them is reckless, especially since it's Chanseok's first mission. Minji suggests they should radio for help while they still have a chance, but Chanseok points out the other hunters won't make it in time. He shows them a map on his phone. The other squads are all the way at the coast, while they're the only ones near Hwajiasa Temple. He explains that if they radio now, there's no guarantee anyone will come, and if the monsters scatter, they'll just become a bigger threat to everyone else. Minji realizes the guy is right. Even if help was near, the friction with the other squads earlier means they probably wouldn't rush to help. He thinks back to the hostile and dismissive attitude of the squad leader. They're on their own. That means we have to deal with them ourselves, Chanseok concludes. He tells them their only option in this situation is a surprise attack. Using his spear, he draws a tactical diagram in the dirt. He tells Minji to aim a fireball at the center of the pack while he handles the sides. Minji stares at him, dumbfounded by the detailed strategy. The rookie is anticipating every single possibility. He starts to wonder who this guy really is. He takes a deep breath and gets into position. Below, the corrosion creatures are rustling about, unaware of the impending strike. On Chanseok's command, Minji unleashes his power, hurling a massive fireball down into the clearing. The fireball connects with a thunderous blast, catching the monsters completely off guard. Screams fill the air as the monsters are engulfed in a roaring inferno. Chanseok prepares to dive into the fray. Minji yells that he needs a second before he can throw another fireball. Chanseok tells him to just fire when ready. Minji nods, focusing on his next attack. Chanseok leaps into action, his spear flashing in the light of the flames. He focuses intently on the battlefield. To him, efficiency is the only thing that matters in a fight. He becomes a whirlwind of steel, cutting through the monsters with ruthless precision. He knows dividing roles is the key to maximum results. One of the monstrous, bat-like creatures lunges at him with its claws extended. Yu Chanseok is a whirlwind of action, slashing through the corrosion creatures. He thinks to himself that until Kim Minji's next fireball is ready, he must keep the monsters at bay to protect the mage's position. He knows he can't hold them all off forever, but he's doing an incredible job. He leaps and strikes with practiced ease, his movements a blur to the monsters. He grits his teeth, focused on the plan. He's a firm believer that dividing roles is the key to surviving an ambush like this, especially with an unpredictable squad. Nearby, Han Sang-ah's hand tightens around her sword's hilt. She's been waiting for her moment to strike, watching for an opening. With a sudden burst of speed, Sang-ah enters the fray. Her blade flashes under the sunlight, cutting down 3 monsters in a single, fluid stroke. She takes a sharp breath, her eyes narrowed in concentration. On her left shoulder, an intricate tattoo glows faintly, hinting at a power that goes beyond mere swordsmanship. From a higher vantage point, Kim Minji calls out, "Chanseok SSI, I'm ready." He's already surrounded by a swirling aura of intense, orange flames. Chanseok glances back with a sharp look. "I'll get out of the way, shoot," he yells, diving to the side to clear the path. Minji doesn't hesitate. He leaps into the air and slams his hands together, focusing all his remaining mana into one final, massive projectile. A titanic fireball slams into the center of the monster pack, erupting in a blinding, earth-shaking explosion that consumes everything in its path. As the smoke begins to billow, Chanseok grips his spear tightly, ready to deal with any monsters that might have survived the blast. Suddenly, an intense, golden light flickers in his eyes as a chilling command rings out through the clearing. "Kill them both!" The atmosphere shifts instantly from hard-won victory to a new, unexpected danger. A final explosion rocks the clearing, sending debris and dust flying everywhere, obscuring the battlefield once more. The battle seems to be over. A spear is thrust deep into the scorched earth amidst the remains of the monsters, the silence of the forest slowly returning. Chanseok stands tall in the center of the clearing, his back to his teammates. He looks over the devastation, satisfied that the immediate threat has been neutralized. Staring out over the battlefield, a wave of relief washes over him. "Everyone did a great job," he begins, ready to praise the team's performance. But the words die in his throat. Kim Min-ji is pointing a handgun directly at him, his face pale and sweating with nervousness. "Kim Min-ji SSI?" Chanseok asks, his voice turning cold as he realizes the magnitude of the betrayal. Kim Min-ji celebrates their victory after clearing out the group of monsters. Suddenly, he reaches for his waist and pulls out what looks like a gun, scaring the life out of Chanseok. It turns out he's just grabbing a tagging device and asks him to move. Chanseok realizes he's being a bit too paranoid. He preps the tool with a loud click. Min-ji explains that he's implanting microchips, so junk dealers can find the bodies and collect the loot later. Trying to haul around heavy monster parts by yourself is just a waste of energy. Once the mission is over, specialized crews come in with trucks to handle the messy work. They scavenge the battlefield for anything that might be worth something. The dealer sells it all off and splits the profit with the hunter after taking a small commission. Chanseok wonders if these dealers can actually be trusted, but his teammate says it's all about the contract. Han Sang-ah is still impressed they managed to take down 50 enemies when a massive thud interrupts them. A giant bat-like monster crashes into the clearing, throwing up a cloud of debris. The impact knocks them back, and Chanseok quickly asks if everyone is still in one piece. Min-ji scrambles to find his footing as the dust settles around them. The beast glares at them, showing off rows of razor-sharp teeth. The protagonist narrows his eyes, focusing on the new threat. This thing is a mid-boss, and its roar echoes through the entire forest. He isn't exactly happy to see another fight starting so soon. The creature growls, its glowing eyes fixed on the trio. Sensing its mana is on a whole different level, Chanseok tells his team to stay out of it. He knows if they try to help, they'll just get in the way and end up dead. Min-ji tries to argue for a group attack and a retreat to report back. Chanseok snaps at him to shut up and get back unless he wants to go home in a body bag. The intensity in his voice leaves them both completely stunned. He pulls his spear, knowing he can only use his paradox flame if he's fighting solo. He gives the monster a taunting look and tells it to come and get him. The creature lunges forward with incredible speed. Watching from the sidelines, Sang-ah looks incredibly anxious, while Min-ji insists they should jump in and give him a hand. Sang-ah tells him to just wait, sensing that Chanseok is still very much in control of the situation. She notices the guy is moving like a shadow, letting the monster swing while never taking a hit. Sang-ah watches the battle unfold with total focus. She realizes he's dodging and striking at the same time, maintaining perfect flow. Every time the spear connects, a burst of black flames follows. The monster starts to slow down as the fire takes its toll on its body. Sang-ah can't believe it. What looked like a struggle at first is now Chanseok just toying with the beast. The girl is left speechless, wondering how a rookie could possibly pull this off. He lands a powerful blow that forces the monster back. He slides across the dirt, setting himself up for the finishing move. He tightens his grip on the shaft of his weapon. Instead of a thrust, he hurls the spear straight up into the air. Sang-ah is completely confused by the weird move. The spear carves a perfect arc through the sky, hovering momentarily before descending steadily into the heart of the clash between the beast and the hunter. Min-ji can only stare in disbelief at this incomprehensible move. He screams a desperate warning for Chanseok to run, just as the monster lunges within inches of the hunter. Face to face with the beast, Chanseok doesn't even flinch. He stares the creature down with a face as cold as stone, completely devoid of emotion. In that split second, blood suddenly sprays from the beast as it collapses, leaving his two teammates in absolute shock. The spear has pinned the massive beast firmly to the ground, stopping it in its tracks. Even after being skewered to the ground by the spear, the monster continues to writhe in a pathetic struggle. The protagonist narrows his eyes, deciding he needs to put this thing out of its misery for good. His teammates can only gape at the scene, completely floored by what they just witnessed. Minji is losing his mind internally, wondering how a guy who looked like he was losing just absolutely dominated the fight. Chanseok calls out to the orange-haired hunter to snap him out of his trance. He asks if monsters like this are common here, but Minji is just as confused, nodding that a grade 3 rift is way above what they were told. He remembers the briefing said this place was unclassified, but the 4-tier system makes it clear there and way over their heads. Based on the monster they just fought, Chanseok concludes that the rift has definitely upgraded itself to a grade 3. Han Sang-a tries to protest based on the official briefing, but the guy tells her to be rational about the evidence. Minji starts panicking, knowing that a grade 3 rift means almost certain death for everyone on the island. He realizes that if things are really this bad, most of the hunters out there aren't coming home. Desperate, he begs Chanseok to go save the others, convinced that the rookie's hidden skills are their only hope. But he gets a cold rejection instead, with the spearman pointing out that he can't save everyone alone and has his own limits. Chanseok snaps them back to reality, reminding them that their mission is to clear the rift, not to play hero, especially since death is just another part of the job. Sang-a then asks him what he'd do if he was the one in trouble, wondering if he'd expect a savior. She questions if he'd feel resentful while dying alone, assuming that naturally he'd want someone to show some compassion. The protagonist stays calm, explaining that he isn't heartless, he's just focused on the cold, hard reality of the outcome. He flashes back to a dying knight, recalling that in his world, some deaths are simply unavoidable. He knows from experience that when you're faced with that kind of fate, your feelings don't change the fact that you're dead. He tells her not to let desperation cloud her judgment, because that's how you get killed. They reach Hwajiesa Temple under the moonlight, a traditional building that seems untouched by the corruption. A foot steps across the threshold as they move inside to set up a base. After a quick sweep, they confirm the building is clear of any monsters, much to Sang-a's relief. Chanseok asks if they can spot anything outside, but it's too dark for them to see much of anything. However, the distant flash of lights gives away the positions of the other hunter squads scattered across the island. He notes that using lights is basically an invitation for monsters to come and kill you. It might be fine against small fries, but if another one of those grade 3 monsters shows up, those hunters are toasted. He decides to send a group warning message to everyone, identifying himself as being with Squad 8. He warns them that the rift is likely grade 3, and tells them to kill the lights if they want to live. Later, they draw a simple map in the dirt to plan their next move. Sang-a confirms that destroying the core of the rift will make the corruption, and the monsters disappear. Chanseok thinks it over, realizing that the solution to their problem is actually pretty straightforward. If they want to end this nightmare, they just have to take out the source of the rift itself. Sang-a sits quietly, her expression softened as she reflects on the gravity of their situation. Minji eventually drifts off to sleep, exhausted from the day's near-death experiences. A hand carefully places a small sensor device on the floor to keep watch. Chanseok keeps his eyes on the entrance, remembering the guy's claim that it would sound an alarm if anything gets close. Chanseok looks out over the dark mountain range, figuring he can leave his teammates to rest while he takes care of business. He speeds through the dense woods, glad he memorized the location of the Alpha Rift so he could end this quickly. Suddenly, something catches his attention, and his eyes widen in surprise as his senses go on high alert. A massive clawed paw slams into the ground right in front of him, cracking the earth beneath it. The protagonist realizes his internal monologue about things going smoothly was a huge mistake. A deep growl rumbles from the shadows as a towering beast corners him, and he mutters in annoyance as he charges his powers. Despite the overwhelming presence of the new threat, he remains composed and ready for a fight. He narrows his gaze, carefully analyzing the creature that just blocked his path. Standing before him is a giant purple monster with glowing white eyes, a monster he has never encountered in any of his previous clashes. Back at the Situation Room on Jiadong Island, things are going south fast. Signals from the hunters are dropping like flies, and they're already presuming some of them are dead. The reports coming in aren't any better. The monsters are moving like an actual army. They've already confirmed a casualty from Team 3. It's a full-blown emergency. They're scrambling to get reinforcements and hitting up every hunter in the area for help. Suddenly, one of the techs spots something on the map. Someone is actually heading straight for the Alpha Erosion Core. The boss is losing it, demanding to know who's crazy enough to be running into the fire instead of away from it. He wants them stopped immediately. It's Yu Chanseok. Turns out he's the one who first reported the core was actually upgrading its rank. The boss orders them to connect to his terminal immediately. He needs to know if this guy is even still alive. In all this chaos, Chanseok is the only one who might actually have some answers. They manage to get a link, but all they hear is Chanseok swearing about how this is definitely some C-rank level mess. On the ground, Chanseok is busy trying not to get flattened. These things are moving way faster than he anticipated. He's taking shots at the association over the radio, calling them out for sending people in without a proper investigation. Barely dodging these things is proof enough. He's so fed up, he threatens to shove an erosion core up their faces when he gets back. The techs are just sitting there wondering if they should just hit the mute button. Despite the attitude, at least they've confirmed he's still breathing. Chanseok realizes his paradoxical phantasm flame has a bit of a quirk. It's not great at straight-up killing individual targets on its own. He has to use the flames to slowly chip away at the big guy's health before finishing them off with his spear. But this massive purple beast isn't making it easy. It's taking the hits and just keeps coming. Fighting that giant bat earlier really drained his mana reserves. His power is a lot weaker than it should be right now. He can't just leave the island, so he needs to find a spot where he can draw some fresh mana. He spots something out of the corner of his eye. Found it. He spots a glowing blue energy source sitting right in the middle of the woods. He lunges forward just as lightning crackles through the air, with the monster right on his heels. He moves with a burst of speed, leaving nothing but a blur behind. He taunts the beast, telling it it's going to have to do better if it wants to keep up. With a wicked smirk, he decides it's time to check something out. Back at HQ, the signal cuts out again. They've completely lost his GPS. The operator realizes Chanseok has officially entered the Alpha Erosion Core. All they can do now is hope for the best. Inside the core, Chanseok is actually surprised. It's a lot cleaner than he thought it would be. He starts wondering how big the rank 1 and 2 cores must be if this is what a rank 3 looks like. Heavy claws dig into the dirt behind him. He isn't alone in here. The core has already pushed past its original boundaries. A hulking, purple-skinned beast looms over him. Chanseok isn't exactly the obsessive type, so he's ready to just end this. The monster lets out a massive roar, showing off a mouth full of jagged teeth. He tightens his grip on his spear. Using the paradoxical phantasm flame comes with one huge risk. Once he lets it loose, it spreads to every single living thing in the vicinity except for him. That includes his own allies if they're too close to the blast. If the flames get to a level where he can't control them, everyone's in trouble. It's a massive drawback to his power, but he decides to stop holding back and lets the energy surge. The purple flames erupt, engulfing the monster in a searing light. Since he's fighting solo, that whole friendly fire problem doesn't even matter. Now that he's powered up, the real fight is finally starting. The mana he drained from the beast surges through his body. It flows deep into his chest, glowing through his ribs as it integrates. He can feel it widening and toughening his meridians with every second. He exhales a mist of pure energy. The absorption is way more efficient than he actually expected. Across from him, the monster is still upright, but it's looking pretty rough. It lets out a pained scream that echoes through the rift. A massive shockwave ripples through the dark sky above. Chanseok just smirks. He's finally figured out the creature's game. He stands his ground as the wind picks up. Suddenly, the monster's backup arrives, surrounding him in the dark. But it's too bad for them that they showed up now. Against him, overwhelming numbers don't mean a thing anymore. The ground caves in, forming a massive crater under the sheer pressure of his power. With just a single swing, he wipes out the entire swarm of small fries. He feels a lot stronger than before, but he knows he's still nowhere near his peak from the other world. He remembers Kim Min-ji mentioning this thing is the toughest enemy around here. As the flames are slowly drawn back and begin to fade, a piercing, ear-splitting sound suddenly cuts through the air. He realizes the monster has already lunged right above his head. Its blade is poised to strike, ready to end his life. He whips his head around, his gaze already locking onto its movement. A massive blast of energy tears through the area. The ground is carved with a long trench, as the sheer recoil of the impact sends both weapons flying apart. He calls out the monster's bluff, asking if it really thinks it won just because his paradoxical phantasm flame ran out, thinking it could just jump in and feast on him like a piece of cake. He emphasizes that the core of this power is on a completely different level, while the monster can do nothing but declare that he's a dead man. Chanseok doesn't look worried. He's just calculating if he can land a 4-hit combo. He dances through a rain of debris, dodging the monster's opening strike. He brings his spear up in a blur to meet the monster's blade. Their weapons collide in a shower of sparks and blue light. The monster pushes back, its glowing eyes fixed on him. The clash of steel and mana is deafening as they fight for control. This is the moment he's been waiting for to unleash his dual moon spear. He spins his weapon, creating a massive glowing blue vortex of strikes. The monster is caught off guard, forced to shield itself from the onslaught. He calls out the name of the technique as the air itself seems to tear. A blue trail forms along the path of his spear, marking its trajectory. That trail mimics his first strike perfectly, repeating it 4 times over. On its own, it's a simple but deadly chain of consecutive hits. He ducks under a massive swipe from the beast's claw. But the real trick is when those blue trails delay their attacks by a single beat. It turns the battle into a double spear dance that's almost impossible to read. The monster realizes too late that it can't parry what it can't see coming. Under the relentless assault of the delayed combo, the beast finally slips up. A massive explosion of mana rocks the battlefield as his strikes connect. Yu Chanseok stares down his opponent, knowing the end is finally near. With a single, fluid motion, he unleashes the full force of his final strike. The monster is bombarded by a relentless rain of glowing blue energy shards. A thunderous crash echoes through the area as the blow connects with devastating power. The beast's mask falls to the earth, consumed by the lingering blue flames of the attack. As the monster dissipates, Chanseok notices a strange, glowing blue cube left in its place. He reaches down and picks up the mysterious reward, inspecting it closely. Suddenly, a realization hits him as he looks toward the horizon and senses a change. Meanwhile, the Situation Room on Jiadong Island has descended into absolute chaos. Reports of monster interference and failed reinforcements flood the communication channels. The unnamed section chief looks on in despair, fearing the total loss of his teams. He feels completely helpless as he prepares for the worst possible outcome. Suddenly, a technician screams out that they've received a priority message from Yu Chanseok. The main screen flickers to life, broadcasting a miraculous notification to all channels. The message confirms that the Alpha Erosion Core has been successfully cleared and the threat eliminated. The section chief can hardly believe his eyes. The miracle he prayed for has actually happened. He is left speechless, wondering how a single hunter could have possibly pulled this off. Far from the noise, Yu Chanseok sits peacefully under the stars, finally enjoying a breath of fresh air. Lightning cracks through the air as the battlefield descends into total chaos. Han Sang-ah swings her blade with everything she has, desperately trying to keep the monsters at bay. Her hands are shaking from the strain, but she forces herself to grip the sword even tighter. She's already bleeding and completely exhausted. Without Yu Chanseok there, the pressure is becoming too much to handle. Kim Min-ji looks over at her, clearly just as drained as she is. They're trapped. A massive swarm of monsters is closing in from all sides, leaving them with no way out. Min-ji is reaching his absolute breaking point. Sang-ah looks down at her wounded leg, wondering if they're actually going to die here. A bat-like monster screeches right in her face, ready to lunge for the kill. She tries to stand her ground for one last stand, but her legs finally give out beneath her. She freezes in place as the monsters swarm in to deliver the finishing blow. Minji yells out for her, but he's far too away to do anything. The beast lunges forward with its jaws wide open. He watches in terror as the monster closes in on her. Suddenly, a massive shockwave rocks the entire area. Sangha squeezes his eyes shut, bracing for the impact. When nothing happens, she opens his eyes in total confusion. Every single monster is turning into black smoke and vanishing into thin air. The following morning, the survivors gather at the Jayadongdo Island assembly point to recover. Yu Chanseok walks through the camp, noticing just how many people got mangled while he was away. The other hunters look up in shock when they realize it's him. Word is already spreading about how he took down a grade 3 rift all by himself. Minji spots him and calls him over to where they're resting. He shows Chanseok the message he received and asks how he could even think of doing something that crazy alone. Chanseok decides to play the hero for now, figuring that managing his public image is a skill in itself. He tells them he would have come sooner if he'd known things were this bad. That's when a man named Byung-jiangti approaches the group. He's a branch manager for the operating corporation, and he wants a word with the man who cleared the rift. Apparently, the mayor wants to see him personally. Walking through the rain, Chanseok grumbles to himself about how old folks love bossing people around. But he figures since he's already going, he might as well negotiate a fat bonus for the job. He reaches the designated meeting spot, umbrella in hand. He's met by Lee Pilyi, the liaison officer for the city. They head inside and start walking through the massive building. Pilyi tells him the mayor canceled his whole morning schedule just for this meeting. He can't stop praising Chanseok, saying no rookie has soloed a rift like this since the great pioneer. Chanseok just thinks that pioneer guy must have been a real monster. They reach the office door, and Pilyi announces that Hunter Yu Chanseok has arrived. The nameplate on the desk says it all, there in the presence of the mayor. Mayor Park Jin greets him warmly, apologizing for the terrible weather. He offers Chanseok a seat and asks Pilyi to grab them some coffee so they can talk business. Coffee is served as the meeting with the mayor officially gets underway. Mayor Park Jin explains that managing the rift on Jayadongdo Island has been a massive headache for the city. Yu Chanseok takes a sip of his coffee while the mayor mentions they couldn't hire an expensive guild due to their tight budget. Park Jin suddenly stands up, practically bursting with pride over how well Chanseok performed. Chanseok just stares at him, wondering where all this sudden energy is coming from. The mayor starts rambling about the world-class infrastructure of Incheon Airport and the local projects. He moves on to boasting about his international cities, clearly proud of the investment they attract. He's glowing as he talks about the massive flow of money and goods passing through his region. Chanseok listens quietly, already sensing that the mayor is building up to a big favor. Later, during a rainy car ride after the meeting, the driver, Lee Pilyi, asks a serious question. He wants to know what Chanseok's true purpose is for choosing the life of a hunter. Chanseok gives him a blunt answer. If the world is a clogged toilet, someone has to be the one to dive into the filth and fix it. Pilyi grips the wheel, absorbing the young man's cynical but pragmatic outlook. As the car speeds through the rain, he warns that skilled hunters usually end up becoming popular celebrities. Chanseok just smirks in the back seat, already anticipating the fame and commercials that come with the territory. Pilyi explains that it's only natural for people to lose sight of their duty once they become famous. He worries that even Korea, the last sanctuary, is being swayed by the power of big capital. He looks into the rearview mirror, truly wishing for Chanseok to stay a real symbol of hope for those in need. He looks in the rearview mirror, hoping Chanseok won't just be another tool for the elite. Looking out at the rain, Chanseok reflects on how predictable the mayor was. He knows exactly what they want, but he's not the type to be easily manipulated by their offers of fame. He thinks back to his former life as a warrior and the endless hardships he's already endured. Flashback to the office, where Chanseok cut through the mayor's fluff and asked what he wanted in return for his support. Park Jin finally dropped the act, admitting he needs help getting re-elected now that his approval ratings are tanking. The mayor is impressed that he's so well-informed, but Chanseok just credits the internet on his phone. He points out that the mayor's term is ending soon, and that most people think re-election will be impossible. Park Jin breaks into a nervous sweat, realizing the young hunter has completely read the situation. Chanseok knows the mayor needs his permission to frame him as a talent discovered by Incheon. He realizes the guy just wants to ride his coattails to save his political career. The mayor tries to steer the conversation back to his connections with overseas and domestic companies. He pulls out a box of instant coffee, nodding that their current model's contract is about to end. He suggests that Chanseok could replace her and become the new face of the brand. Chanseok looks at him with a deadpan expression, feeling like the mayor thinks he can be bought for cheap. The mayor is stunned when Chanseok doesn't immediately jump at the endorsement offer. Chanseok explains that if he continues working as a top hunter, he'll be a new face, regardless of any ads. He leans in, telling the mayor that everything he's offering is already his to take anyway. Park Jin panics, offering to handpick the highest-paying and safest commissions for him instead. Chanseok finds the offer completely uninteresting and turns him down flat. He tells the mayor to just let the coffee model keep their job and extend their contract instead. Far away from the office, the rain continues to pour over a dark construction site. A mysterious figure in a hoodie stands in the shadows, while another man kneels before him in the rain. The hooded figure reports into his phone that the Jayadongdo Island test was a complete failure. The subordinate looks up with a nervous expression, telling his superior that while the failure was unfortunate, there is some good news to report. He shows the hooded figure a video clip on a smartphone, piquing the mysterious man's curiosity. The video shows Yu Chanseok during his hunter certification exam, where his overwhelming strength left the spectators in total awe. A sinister grin spreads across the hooded figure's face as he watches the footage, acknowledging that the young hunter is truly exceptional. It's the first of the month, the one moment the whole country waits for. The September 2025 hunter rankings are finally about to drop. Kids are yelling for their moms to come look at the screen, as people on the street glue their eyes to their phones. Some guys are already debating who's going to take the top spot this month. Usually these rankings don't change much and just act as entertainment, but things are different this time. In a hospital room, a guy with a broken arm is hyped for the reveal. Association President Moon Jiangti is presented with the official World Hunter Ranking report. Out in the snowy mountains, Lee Si-yoon wonders if that guy actually made the list. Even with all the flashy hype surrounding the event, Yu Chanseok looks pretty bored while checking his phone. For everyone watching, the only thing that really matters is the top 10. Lee Si-yoon lands the 10th spot while her team finishes setting up camp. Coming in at 5th place is Kim Ki-hyun. Choi Yo-ryum takes the 3rd spot, engulfed in a pillar of fire. 2nd place goes to Jang Tae-seok. And the number 1 spot, the top hunter this month, is Yu Chanseok. A staff member calls Chanseok out to face the crowd, apologizing for the wait. He's officially listed as a newly registered hunter for 2025. He just pulled off the fastest rank entry in the history of the association. If a 5-year veteran had cleared a grade 3 zone solo, people might have ignored it as a mundane feat. But for a rookie to do that on his first mission, that changes everything. He steps up to a podium facing a massive crowd of reporters, all screaming questions about how he did it without backup. Chanseok feels like a kid on one of those Finding Geniuses TV shows and tells them he's only taking one last question. One reporter desperately asks about his mindset as a hunter or if he has a resolution to share. He isn't interested in giving them some cliché, scripted nonsense. He just tells them he'll let his results do the talking. Later, he's in a helicopter looking down at a massive crater where a city used to be. Moon Jiangti explains that when these erosion zones appeared, most nations lost all their administrative capabilities. Korea was different. They became a powerhouse by turning mana into high-end technology. Chanseok asks if this devastation is what happened to the countries that couldn't handle the zones. The president confirms it, nodding that many capitals vanished instantly, and asks if he wants a closer look. That hole is Gonsalok, one of the Great Eight, the 8 most dangerous erosion zones in the world. It appeared suddenly 13 years ago and just kept widening from the city's center. The disaster hit without any warning or omen. A few people managed to survive the initial event. But once a space transforms into an erosion zone, most people are swept away before they can even run. In just a few days, an entire city was silently erased from the map. While the nation is still standing, the central government's actual power has weakened significantly. Chanseok appreciates the intel, but he asks what any of this has to do with him being called here. The president mentions that a few days ago, Yoon Seong-hyun of Grand Purity came to see him. Chanseok thinks back to that Hulk, who had warned him that he needed to be extremely careful with every decision regarding his future. Apparently, that Hulk, Yoon Seong-hyun, immediately demanded to know exactly where Chanseok lives. Grand Purity lives by a survival of the fittest ideology, and they might try to force him into submission. Chanseok realizes he's in a tough spot. He knows he can't take on Yoon Seong-hyun with just brute force right now. He admits he prefers working alone rather than being tied down to a guild. Moon Jiangti suggests he needs to increase his own influence, perhaps by taking on major missions directly from the association president. Chanseok knows there's always a catch and asks what the old man wants in return for his help. The president's gaze sharpens as he says he just wants Chanseok to remember who helped him out. He figures it's a fair trade. Working for the chairman will definitely boost his reputation. The job is simple, escorting a cargo ship from Busan to Nanning because transporting daily necessities in this era is a nightmare. But looking at the list, Rolexes, luxury cars, and high-end tea, Chanseok wonders if the definition of necessities changed while he was away. The president insists that for some people, these things are absolutely essential. Chanseok doesn't buy it, questioning why such junk is needed when central governments are failing. Moon Jiangti explains that even while nations crumble under the erosion zones, international politics are still very much alive. Chanseok sees it for what it really is, a bribe to grease some political wheels, and he flatly declines. The president is stunned as Chanseok starts unbuckling his seatbelt mid-flight. He tells the old man that his mind is made up. Getting dragged into a political game is a fool's errand. Moon Jiangti tries to reason with him, reminding him that he's still just a rookie who only just debuted. He sighs, thinking that the sudden attention has already gone to the young hunter's head. Chanseok doesn't care and dumps the mission documents right out of the helicopter door. He offers a casual thanks for the ride before stepping out into the open air. He tells the shocked president he'll find his own way back to Seoul. With a final push off the ledge, he lets go. He plummets toward the ocean below, completely unfazed by the fall. Moon Jiangti can only watch in disbelief, gripping the side of the chopper. A massive splash erupts as Chanseok hits the water far below. The president can only shake his head, the absolute audacity of kids these days. Down at Incheon Port, the sun is beginning to set over the rows of shipping containers. A port worker taking a coffee break hears something splashing near the docks. He looks over the railing to see bubbles rising from the murky water. Suddenly, a hand grabs the edge of the pier, and Chanseok hauls himself out of the sea. He gasps for air, muttering about how crazy it is for someone to threaten him like that. The confused worker offers him a hand, telling him he looks like he's been through a lot. As he dries off, Chanseok realizes that what he needs right now is to build his own power base. His new strategy is to take on the messiest, lowest-tier requests that no one else is willing to touch. That way, he can become a big enough deal that no one will ever be able to push him around again. He checks his phone for available missions, looking for something that fits his new criteria. He finds a request from a victims association regarding a kidnapping on Tsushima Island and hits accept. It's an estimated grade 2 erosion zone, the perfect place to start. He sits alone at the edge of the pier, taking a moment to breathe as the sky turns a deep orange. He stares out at the horizon, knowing he's going to be very busy for a while. On September 3rd, fishermen headed out for peak prawn season. But things weren't right at sea. Erosion entities showed up and started snatching the fishermen like they were hunting prey. A survivor who barely made it out says the hostages are actually still alive. The mission is straightforward: go to Tsushima, rescue the guys, and wipe out the entities. Yu Chanseok looks over the mission brief. 55 million won is the prize for taking out a second-class threat. If he handles this solo, he doesn't have to split the cash. Plus, he'd get a heroic story and a massive boost in fame. It's a tempting challenge, but there's a catch. Erosion entities are on a completely different level depending on their rank. A third class has the destructive power of a tank. A second class, that's basically a walking natural disaster. And a first class requires the entire country to mobilize just to fight one of them. Chanseok handled third classes easily, but he's not sure if he can withstand a second class alone. He needs someone useful to minimize the risks. Top-tier hunters wouldn't even look at a private request like this. He wonders if there's actually anyone available. Then he remembers her. Later, Chanseok stands on the deck of a boat, fully geared up. He looks back as someone calls his name. Han Sang-a is on board, asking how much longer until they hit the island. Chanseok estimates about an hour while checking his phone. He tells her to rest up, because this fight is going to be way harder than the last one. Sang-a gets distracted by the fancy armor on his shoulder. She realizes it's the limited edition Iron Seraph shoulder gear, and wonders how he even got his hands on it. He tells her a scrap dealer he signed with gave it to him as a gift. He smirks, telling her that expectations for a solo prospect like him are just higher than for a rookie valedictorian. He bluntly tells her to just get strong and famous if she thinks it's unfair. A few days back, Sang-a was shocked when he called asking for a teammate. She doubted she could handle a second class after nearly dying against a third class. Chanseok stayed quiet on the other end. He just asked if she actually wanted to get stronger. He reminded her of when she begged to learn from him because he was the stronger one. If she's still game, he guarantees he can make her several times stronger. During her training, she looked determined to prove herself. She asked if he was serious about his offer. She showed him the massive burn scar on her shoulder, the reason she needed to get stronger. Chanseok looks at her, remembering that moment. She's ready to dive into hell itself if it gets her the power she needs. Suddenly, the boat's alarm starts blaring. They've got unidentified objects dead ahead. Ghostly ships emerge from the fog. Chanseok counts 5 ships in the distance through the mist. They need to get over there without being spotted, since civilians are involved. Han Sang-a asks Chanseok if he has a plan to get them both across. Our guy seems pretty surprised that she's even asking him that. He mocks her, asking if a top student really doesn't have a single trick for this. Looking at his reaction, Sang-a realizes this guy has zero plans for this trip. She speaks up. Actually, there is a way. Rarely getting a chance to hold the upper hand over this arrogant Chanseok, she flashes a smug grin and slowly mocks him. You can't fly, can you? A barrage of teasing follows, making the cold-faced guy's expression darken instantly. Actually, this is a piece of cake, she laughs. All you have to do is admit you're useless at this and I'll take over, bahahaha. Water explodes as they suddenly launch forward. In the end, Sang-a is the one carrying Chanseok as she skates across the ocean. He complains about the water splashing him, but she just tells him she's still working on her water-running form. Something catches his attention. He tells Sang-a to head for the nearest ship, but she asks why. He senses a massive amount of mana coming from the back ship. It's the real threat. She acknowledges and prepares for the boarding. She locks her eyes on the target. As they get closer, she spots a silhouette on deck and thinks it might be a survivor. Chanseok tells her to look closer. That definitely isn't a human. A skeletal erosion entity lets out a screech as it patrols the deck. Sang-a leaps and lands firmly on the ship's railing. Chanseok lands right behind her, warning her that landing that hard is gonna wreck her knees. He tells her she's just going to draw more attention as a whole mob of skeletons appears. One moment he's lecturing her on how she needs to improve, but the next he slams his foot down, shattering a whole section of the deck. His eyes shift into a deadly serious mode. Instantly, a barrage of dual moon spears fires off, sending dozens of these minions straight to their graves. Chanseok analyzes the enemies. They're just the lowest tier of second class, nothing they can't handle. He keeps a close eye on her performance. Lightning crackles as she tears through the enemy's front line, sending a massive shockwave toward Chanseok that leaves even him stunned. He tells her to dial it back, since she's using way too much power for these weaklings. He reminds her of his promise. He'll teach her to be several times stronger than she is now. But right now, she's still over-outputting and wasting too much energy. She doesn't even bother to reply, only muttering a low "damn it" under her breath. She blasts another group with a massive surge. He shouts that she's still using too much mana. She keeps going, and he keeps nagging her to reduce the output further. She stays focused, determined to get it right. She knows the life of the weak is just a dark, short tragedy. Thinking back to her childhood, she swore she'd never be that weak again. Back in the fight, Chanseok tells her to keep her head in the game and look ahead. She channels her power, and a skeleton's face starts to crumble under the pressure. A massive bolt of lightning strikes the deck, completely vaporizing the enemies. With glowing eyes and a cold resolve, she knows she dive into hell just to get the strength she needs. Chapter 10. After a brief struggle, another skeleton monster bites the dust. Han Sang-ah stands over the wreckage, catching her breath after the skirmish. Yu Chanseok checks in to see if she's finally finished clearing the area. He gives a quick thumbs up, nodding he's already handled the monsters on the other boats. She looks down, sheathing her blade and admitting her stubbornness was a bit of a mistake. She actually thanks him for the advice, though Chanseok brushes it off, saying most people never learn even when it's handed to them. She mentions this is the first time anyone's bothered to give her pointers, which surprises him since the academy is literally for learning. His mouth is busy talking, but his hands are in full grind mode, spamming that chip shooter to rake in the cash. She explains that she learned everything way too fast for her teachers to keep up. Playing along, Chanseok teases that if that's the case, she really might surpass him one day. She looks him dead in the eye and claims there isn't a single teacher she hasn't already surpassed. Chanseok just stares at her with a completely deadpan expression. He starts walking away, telling her that's not happening here. He's making sure she's looking up to him for the rest of her life. With that settled, they start making their way off the docks. The local officers give them a crisp salute as they prepare to move out on the next leg of the mission. They're heading for Jeoje Island next, and the crew wishes them luck. Chanseok goes over the intel, nodding that according to the survivors, the hostages are being held at a shrine. Sanga points out there are 2 shrines on the island, Gaijin and Atazumi. He figures Gaijin is the best first stop, since it's only a couple of hours away on foot. But he knows getting there is the easy part. Getting 15 hostages back alive is the real challenge. Carrying that many people, especially if they're wounded, is going to be a nightmare if they have to run. Plus, there's a nasty mana signature in the fog, and every monster on the island will be on their tail. He realizes they're gonna need a vehicle if they want to get everyone out in one piece. He finds an old van and asks if she's a decent driver. She gives him a very confident, of course. Cut to the van screaming down the road, tires screeching as she pushes it to the limit. Chanseok is hanging on for dear life inside, screaming that her driving is anything but good. They plow straight through a horde of monsters, and he asks if she even knows what a brake pedal is for. She leans out the window with a wild grin, telling him he's welcome to drive if he doesn't like her style. He grips the side of the seat and decides it's better to just shut up and hold on. He climbs onto the roof with his spear, admitting her crazy driving is still better than his 20-year-old license. He yells back, claiming his combat skills are still leagues above hers, so her only job is to stay focused and handle the wheel like a professional. He glances back, realizing a massive swarm of undead monsters is hot on their tail. In a flash, he hurls his spear toward the oncoming zombies. Any monster that manages to get close gets its head smashed in. He tightens his grip on a rope, readying his next move. He gives the rope a powerful tug to pull his spear back. As he snaps the spear back into his hand, he remarks that this game is actually pretty fun. Suddenly, his eyes widen as he spots a fresh wave of enemies closing in. A pack of monsters leaps out from the trees, and he warns Sanga they're coming in hot from the left. She doesn't even flinch, just telling him to leave it to her as she cranks the wheel hard. Chanseok realizes too late what she's about to do and braces himself. She drifts the van sideways, using the entire side of the vehicle as a massive battering ram to send the monsters flying. She laughs like a total maniac, telling the creatures to enjoy their new life as roadkill. Chanseok just stares in disbelief, seriously regretting his decision to let her drive. A peaceful view of the hills, but things aren't going to stay quiet for long. Deep in the woods, stone steps lead the way up to Gaijin Shrine. Han Sanga pushes the van to the limit, plowing up the stairs with a massive horde of monsters right on her bumper. They hit the gate, and Yu Chanseok shouts for her to get inside while he handles the tail. She stays focused on the wheel, trusting him to keep the monsters off their back. He leaps off the roof, deciding it's time to clear out the obstacles trailing behind. Chanseok channels his mana, summoning his signature purple flames. These creatures just won't quit, so he's going to make the terrain work for them instead. The dark flames flare up, ready to bend reality in a way only he can. Paradox Flame. He floods the entire staircase with surging purple energy. He isn't trying to burn the monsters, he's burning the friction right off the stone steps. With the path now engulfed in the relentless Paradox Flame, not a single zombie stands a chance of catching up to them. Inside the shrine, Sanga discovers a survivor tied to a pillar, his face ghostly pale from sheer terror. Sanga steps up and asks if the man is okay. He just stares blankly at her with terror-stricken eyes, unable to utter a single word. Sanga tries to reassure him, introducing herself as a member of the Hunter Association. But the survivor is barely conscious, drooling as he looks right through her. Suddenly, he starts screaming at the top of his lungs in pure agony. She thinks he's afraid of her, so she quickly tries to explain she's actually there to save him. But he isn't screaming at her, he's yelling for them to run for their lives. Sanga freezes, finally realizing the real threat is looming right behind her. A massive samurai corrosion creature towers over her, crackling with lightning and ready to strike. It swings its massive sword down, but Chanseok intercepts it with his spear just in time. He tells her to get the survivors into the van, while he settles things with the big guy. Yu Chanseok stands ready as the samurai boss closes in. The monster raises its blade, its mask twisted into a grimace. It looms over Chanseok, bringing its massive weapon down with crushing force. Chanseok keeps his eyes locked on his opponent, waiting for the perfect moment. The heavy blade smashes into the ground right where he stood. Smoke and debris erupt from the impact as the samurai continues its assault. From the sidelines, Han Sanga screams out in a panic. A massive shockwave tears through the area. When the dust settles, the monster's helmet lies abandoned on the ground while Chanseok stands over the remains. Chanseok coldly informs Sanga that she's officially banned from touching the wheel on the way back, but she doesn't hesitate to tell him to just get inside. She ignores him and checks on the van, confirming all the hostages are safely inside. Suddenly, her expression shifts as she notices something further down the road. Chanseok stays focused, telling her to keep her eyes on what's ahead. A thick fog of dark mana appears, filled with dozens of glowing red eyes. A horde of zombie-like creatures shrieks as they block the path. Chanseok realizes these things are still kicking, even after being mowed down by the van. He turns to Sanga and asks to borrow her sword for a second. She's offended, saying it's a huge insult to ask a swordsman to hand over their blade. Chanseok doesn't have time for a lecture and asks her which is more important, her pride or their lives. She doesn't argue further and tosses her katana over to him. He catches it midair and takes a combat stance. Chanseok looks at the glowing device on his wrist. wishing he didn't have to use it so early. He thinks back to Jiadong Island, where he'd scavenged a strange, glowing cube. Back in the present, he prepares to activate the hidden power. This piece of equipment is actually a special set of tactical gloves. As he pulls the glove tight, he knows these are anything but ordinary. A blue light pulses from the wristband as it begins drawing mana from the air. To most, this mana battery is just a basic support item for low-level hunters. But in Chanseok's hands, its potential is on another level. He checks the gauge. It has enough juice for a 5-minute burst. With this stored mana, he can temporarily reach the power level of a top-tier hunter like Lee Si-yoon. He launches himself forward, sword ready. The battery on his wrist hums with intense energy. The blue light flares up as he channels the mana into his strike. Standing firm atop the van, he unleashes a flurry of energy blades, carving through the entire horde in a single, complex sequence. Sang-ah watches from the van, completely stunned by the display. The road is littered with the shredded remains of the monsters. Chanseok calmly sheathes the sword as the extra mana begins to dissipate. He leaps back into the cabin and orders her to drive straight for the harbor. They speed down the empty coastal road toward Hatakatsu Harbor. Sang-ah is relieved, thinking they finally cleared the biggest obstacle. Her relief is short-lived, as another massive group of monsters starts swarming out of the shadows behind them. Sang-ah worries the car won't hold out much longer, but Chanseok just tells her to floor it. The monsters are closing in, and she's not sure how much more of this they can take. A sudden screech pierces the air as a glowing barrier appears behind the van. The monsters slam into the energy wall, unable to push through. Sang-ah's eyes widen as she realizes they're safe for the moment. The van finally gives up the ghost, sputtering and coughing before coming to a dead halt, but it did its job, leaving the frustrated, roaring horde far behind. She's completely baffled, nodding that the creatures just stopped as if they hit a solid wall. Her mind races, wondering how such a thing is even possible. She looks back and sees a massive yellow magic circle glowing on a nearby building. Chanseok calmly explains that it's a technique called the method of divine protection. Sang-ah has never heard of it and asks for an explanation, which he simplifies as a way to handle monsters. When she asks where he picked up such a skill, he tells her she couldn't learn it even if he explained. He reveals that his knowledge comes from another world entirely. She clearly doesn't buy it, but he just smiles, nodding that he's slowly getting back into form. Curious, she asks if this method makes him invincible against any monster. He admits it's not a silver bullet for everything. The barrier only works on the low-level grunts, not the real threats. Right on cue, a massive armored samurai looms over them, fixated on its offering. Sang-ah feels a sudden chill as the monster's presence overwhelms her. Chanseok mutters something about the mind's eye, catching her attention. She wonders if he's talking about that legendary sixth sense used to predict an enemy's every move. To Sang-ah, it feels utterly insane that a reanimated corpse could actually possess master-level skills. He steps forward, his hand firmly stopping her from drawing her sword. He tells Sang-ah to stay calm, assuring her there's nothing to be afraid of. He explains that concepts like the mind's eye are mostly just illusions. He tells her to pay close attention as he prepares to show her how it's actually done. The samurai boss stands its ground, glowing with a dark, menacing energy. The monster launches a powerful swing, cutting through the air. Sang-ah is terrified, not understanding why he's trying to take this thing on by himself. He continues his lesson, explaining that what people call a mind's eye is just combat reflexes. It's nothing more than a trained response to an enemy's intent, though he admits few can master it. Sang-ah watches, mesmerized by his confidence in the face of such danger. He lists off other grand-sounding titles for enlightenment, dismissing them as mere labels. The samurai swings its blade once more, but Chanseok doesn't even blink. He simply counters with a basic spear strike. He stands deathly still, as the massive blade hangs suspended right above his head. And just like that, after a few heart-stopping moments of silence, the samurai's armor suddenly shatters into pieces right before Sang-ah's stunned eyes. As the samurai falls, he tells her that in the end, these monsters aren't that special. He warns her that getting caught up in the idea of enlightenment is a dangerous trap. Using those special names just makes people set limits on what they think they can achieve. On a real battlefield, titles and names don't mean a thing. He speaks with absolute certainty, like someone who's seen it all before. He reminds her that he had to sacrifice everything just to claw his way out of that cycle. Han Sang-a gazes at Chanseok's back as he continues his lecture, nodding that even an armored vehicle couldn't dent that monster. But all that power was wasted the moment it chose to activate Mind's Eye. She looks away, struck by the realization that she contributed almost nothing to the actual hunt. She acknowledges that while she was struggling just to do her best, Chanseok's power far exceeded her understanding of strength. She decides that if she wants to reach her goals, a half-hearted effort isn't going to cut it anymore. With a resolute look, she prepares herself to speak up and change her path. She calls out to Chanseok, telling him there's something she needs to ask. Looking him straight in the eyes, she pleads with him to teach her how to fight properly. Han Sang-a gets serious and asks him to teach her for real. Yu Chanseok is a little confused since he thought he already was. But she wants more than just tips. She's looking for direct instruction. She knows she's weak compared to him and feels like she's running out of time. He just asks her why she's in such a rush. Her expression hardens as she says she wants to destroy Club Shadai with her own hands. Club Shadai is one of the Great Eight, the deadliest erosion zones in the world. It's infamous for swallowing the entire Himalayan mountain range in a single breath. Yu Chanseok thinks revenge is a pretty massive goal for her to be chasing. She confirms it's all about getting back at those who hurt her family. She's not asking for a handout, though. She pulls out a card to show she can pay. Turns out she's part of the KY Group, a conglomerate worth trillions that her family owns. Even though she's royalty, she tells him she's already given up on the family succession war. He points out that if she becomes a top-tier hunter, she'll probably be dragged right back into that drama anyway. She doesn't care. She promises to give him rare elixirs if he makes her the best. She figures he wants to get stronger too, and these will help him reach whatever level he's aiming for. Yu Chanseok just keeps a straight face. He knows she wouldn't believe his actual goal even if he told her. In his mind, he sees a legendary armored figure. That level she thinks he's chasing, he hit that ages ago. For him, the only reason to get stronger is to restore the world to exactly how it used to be. He takes her hand and agrees to the deal, though he says he doesn't need the rare stuff. He tells her he has a simpler request, but first, they need to get the hostages to the medical center. At the hospital, a doctor starts taking notes on the survivors they rescued. He reports that there are 7 patients in total, but they're all suffering from extreme malnutrition. According to him, it'll be at least a week before any of them are conscious enough to talk. He tells them to let the victims recover and promises to notify them as soon as someone wakes up. As they head outside, Chanseok tells Han Sang-a they're starting her training right now. They find an open spot, and he draws his spear ready to go. But before they start, he has one question for her. He raises his weapon and asks if she thinks she could dodge his spear if he swung at full power. She looks skeptical. She thinks the skill gap between them is just too big for that to be possible. He tells her that's not true. She can definitely dodge it. The key is pushing her senses to their absolute limit. He tells her she needs to start by really seeing with her eyes. Then she has to listen with her ears for every tiny sound. Next, she needs to smell the air around her with her nose. And finally, she has to feel the shift in the atmosphere with her skin. His advice is to master all her senses and fight with full awareness, not just autopilot. He tells her to take up her weapon, declaring that it's time to see if she has actually learned anything. Before he even finishes speaking, he completely vanishes from sight. She panics, wondering if she should start by trying to listen for him. Suddenly, he's right behind her. He tells her she's wrong. He stares her down and says she's too slow. Senses should always come before thinking. He tells her that in a real fight, thinking is a luxury she doesn't have. She has to trust her senses and just move. Theory time is officially over. he decides it's time to switch things up to practical training. A loud boom echoes from the building as they start their mock battle. The impact of their clash kicks up a massive cloud of dust and debris. One of the guards hears the commotion and rushes over, wondering where everyone went. He stops dead in his tracks, looking completely stunned by what he's seeing. The ground literally shatters under the force of Chanseok's strikes. Han Sang-ah swings her sword with everything she's got, trying to keep up with his relentless pace. But Chanseok is just warming up, watching her every move with a cold, focused stare. He moves so fast he's basically a blur, closing the distance in the blink of an eye. Another massive shockwave rips through the training area as he brings his spear down. Han Sang-ah stands her ground, her eyes wide as she tries to read his next attack. He doesn't give her a second to breathe, launching into another high-speed combo. Her eyes dart around in panic. She realizes she can't dodge this one. Just as the combo is about to be unleashed, a voice calling Chanseok's name rings out, stopping Sang-ah from being crushed to a pulp. Luckily, a guard interrupts the session to announce that one of the survivors finally woke up. Chanseok immediately stops, surprised that they've already been training for that long. He calls it a day and tells her to follow him inside to get some real answers. They find the survivor sitting up in bed, looking dazed but mostly recovered. When he asks if she's okay, she starts telling him a strange story about a truck. She says a truck pulled up to the place where they were being held, and a group of people got out. Chanseok's expression darkens as he listens to the rest of the survivor's story. Han Sang-ah asks if the people on the truck were just more hostages being brought in. The survivor shakes her head, saying those people were way too calm and the monsters actually treated them like allies. She explains that the monsters were actually helping the humans load selected hostages onto the back of the truck. Chanseok realizes that the missing hostages weren't killed. They were handpicked for something else. The survivor admits it wasn't a daring escape. Those people basically just let her go. Han Sang-ah is completely baffled by the idea of humans and monsters working together like that. Chanseok just lets out a tired sigh, piecing together the true nature of the rescue. He points out how impossible it would be for a normal person to escape a place that even trained hunters struggle with. Han Sang-ah realizes with a chill that the entire mission might have been a carefully staged trap. Chanseok is insulted by the sheer arrogance of whoever planned this. He's furious that anyone would use human lives as bait for such a petty trick. Han Sang-ah watches him, wondering if his cold fury is because he feels underestimated. Or maybe it's because these people were arrogant enough to use human lives as bait for a trap. He asks the survivor if there were any other details, and she mentions seeing a cat mascot. The memory clearly haunts her as she describes the strange, organized nature of her captors. They head over to the local airport, which happens to use that exact cat as its official mascot. Han Sang-ah asks him how he managed to figure out the location so fast. He jokes that as a commoner, he actually knows how to use the internet on his phone to look things up. They reach the main terminal, but the entire place is eerily empty, not a single person in sight. Or so they thought, until Chanseok spots a blue-haired martial artist waiting for them on a high ledge. Chanseok can't help but notice the sheer number of piercings covering the stranger's forehead and eyes. He mentally jokes to himself, wondering if the person accidentally ran their face through a sewing machine. But he quickly shakes off the humor as he senses the immense, heavy pressure radiating from the figure above them. The unknown pierced martial artist, a menacing figure in a tattered white gi, smirks down at them and casually calls out a greeting. Kim Jae-hyun looms over them, introducing himself with cold confidence. He leans in close, making sure they know he's the only reason they're still alive. Chanseok and Sang-ah don't look particularly grateful for the save. Jae-hyun suddenly grabs a nearby hostage by the shirt. He lifts the bloodied man up, looking into his eyes with zero empathy. Then he just tosses the guy into the dark, swirling portal of the erosion zone. Sang-ah watches in shock, realizing exactly what this guy is doing. The hostage is swallowed by the darkness, unable to fight back. In an instant, the man's body begins to mutate in a horrifying display. He crawls back out as a mindless monster, a hollow shell of who he was. Jae-hyun dismisses the result, calling the man a weak host that produced nothing. With a single explosive strike, he wipes out the failure. The duo stares at him, realizing they're dealing with a total monster in human skin. Jae-hyun calmly tightens his belt, as if he didn't just murder someone. He explains that regular people just aren't good enough materials for what he needs. Chan-seok realizes these guys aren't interested in a ransom. They need the hostages themselves to turn them into an army of monsters. Jae-hyun says he doesn't care about them, but he has to explain his vision for the greater good. He proudly reveals his group's name, the Heirs of Dangun. He claims they've gathered to secure Korea's dominance in the New World Order. To prove his point, he stomps the ground, shattering the earth and sending cars jumping. He sports a twisted smile, talking about building a truly powerful nation. He blurs into a streak of motion, moving with incredible speed. He kicks a car like it's a pebble, sending it flying straight into the air. Close up, the massive impact reduces the car to scrap metal as it hurtles straight toward Chan-seok and Sang-ah. Chan-seok is completely unimpressed by the nationalist rant. He looks at the destruction, his expression remains deadpan. With a single spear strike, he cleaves the car in two. He then bluntly points out that the nation is already a major power, shattering the villain's twisted logic. That sets Jae-hyun off, and he rushes in, screaming that it's not enough. Chan-seok readies his spear, eyes locked on the charging martial artist. Jae-hyun goes for a high-flying kick, putting his full weight into the strike. He rants about the history of the peninsula as he fights. He brings up old stories of paying tribute, fueled by a deep-seated grudge. He points to the time their sovereignty was stolen as his ultimate motivation. Chan-seok blocks the blow, nodding that this black belt is faster than he expected. The force of the kick rings out with a deafening crack, sending both of them flying backward. Chan-seok skids back, nodding that while the guy is fast, his logic about Korea's position actually makes sense. But it's all just empty theory as Chan-seok begins to piece everything together while the two of them square off. He tells him straight up that he has no intention of saving the world. He reminds him of the lives at stake, but the villain just sneers, claiming that Chan-seok is the one who truly doesn't understand how the world works. Then he drops a bombshell. They've found a way to control the erosion zones. Chan-seok's eyes widen as he realizes the catastrophic implications of that power. Chan-seok contemplates the stakes. If they really can control the erosion zones, the era of risking lives would finally be over. He suddenly shifts gears, offering to hand over Sang-ah if Jae-hyun shares the secret of that control. Heh! The highborn waifu immediately snaps at Chan-seok for the bizarre condition he just breathed out. Jae-hyun isn't buying it that easily, questioning why he should reveal anything to a stranger. He claims they've already achieved sufficient control, but Chan-seok immediately calls him out for it not being full. Chan-seok doubles down, labeling the whole group as frauds who talk big without any real proof. That touches a nerve, and Jae-hyun tells him to shut up before launching a devastating high kick. The impact is massive, shattering the ground and sending a shockwave through the area. Chan-seok skids back through the debris, cursing himself for maybe overdoing the provocation. He checks his gear, realizing he was just trying to buy enough time to get his mana back. He's still short on juice. His current reserves aren't enough for his signature flame attack. Jae-hyun's eyes widen as he senses a sudden shift in the air. Sang-ah charges into the fray, her body wreathed in crackling green electricity. Jae-hyun just scoffs, mockingly assuming she'd been standing there frozen in fear this whole time. The ground sparks under her feet as she closes the distance in a flash. He mocks her, asking the pretty girl if she's finally found some courage. Chan-seok tries to wave her off, but she's already spotted his empty mana gauntlets. He looks taken aback as she calls out his lack of energy. She pulls out a high-grade elixir, asking him exactly how much time he needs. Without waiting for an answer, she uncorks the bottle and downs the glowing liquid. She tosses the empty vial aside, her expression turning deadly serious. Lightning erupts from her body in a violent surge of pure mana. Chan-seok panics, realizing she's purified way too many elixirs and is heading for a total overload. She just tells him he's got 5 minutes to finish this before she hits her limit. Above them, the sky turns pitch black as a massive storm begins to gather. A bolt of lightning tears through the clouds, striking down with localized fury. Jae-hyun tells her to relax as the energy around them reaches a fever pitch. Sang-ah screams, channeling the overwhelming power through her sword. She clashes with Jae-hyun in a blinding flash of light, but he warns he might end up killing her by accident. He watches her movements closely, looking for a single opening. A massive pillar of lightning descends, swallowing everything in its path. Sang-ah pants, staring through the smoke to see if her desperate gambit actually landed. Jae-hyun wipes a trickle of blood from the corner of his mouth, but that arrogant smirk doesn't fade for a second. He floats back up into the air, dismissing the entire electrical assault as ticklish. With a single kick, he unleashes a massive shockwave that sends Sang-ah flying. She's sent tumbling through the air, coughing up blood from the sheer force of the blow. Before she can hit the ground, a steady hand reaches out and catches her. Jae-hyun looks on in utter confusion as Chan-seok calls him Slipknot, baffled by how he rejoined the fray so quickly. Chan-seok holds Sang-ah tight, his gauntlet glowing with a sudden massive surge of mana. Jae-hyun is stunned. There's no way someone could gather that much mana that quickly. Chan-seok just stares him down, asking why he's so surprised by the sudden turnaround. He points out that the principle is exactly the same as the piercings on Jae-hyun's face. He tightens his grip on his weapon, telling the villain he'd have to be a fool not to notice the leakage. Chan-seok explains that because Jae-hyun has pushed himself past his limits, the air around them is saturated with his leaking mana. He stands tall, his body crackling with energy, as he reveals he's used that leakage to fully restore his own mana for a final strike. Jae-hyun is visibly shaken, sweating as he tries to deny the possibility of someone absorbing wasted mana so easily. Chan-seok doesn't bother with further explanations, telling the villain it doesn't matter since his life ends here. With a sudden burst of speed, he triggers a high-level skill called Blue Trajectory, leaving a brilliant blue trail in his wake. He descends on Jae-hyun like a storm, unleashing a devastating 16-hit chain of attacks that blurs into a whirlwind of light. Kim Jae-hyun is on the ground, struggling to even draw a breath as the internal damage sets in. Everything goes dark. He can't even feel his own heart beating anymore. He's barely staying upright, forced to use mana just to keep his body from collapsing completely. Yu Chan-seok stands there, watching the light fade from his opponent's eyes. With his last bit of strength, Jae-hyun begs the captain for help. Suddenly, a blinding light erupts from the void, tearing through the surrounding space. Chan-seok senses something coming and braces himself for a new threat. A massive impact shakes the ground as he blocks a sudden, powerful strike. The force behind the attack is immense, cracking the pavement right under his feet. Chan-seok looks around, trying to figure out where that just came from. A gloved hand pulls back a traditional bow, crackling with mana. The captain reveals himself, impressed that Chan-seok actually had the instincts to block that. Chan-seok recognizes the style, traditional Korean archery. It's an old-school concept, but the power behind it is no joke. Just by the energy in the air, he can tell this guy is leagues above anyone he's fought so far. This isn't just a small gap in skill. This guy is several times stronger than a typical high-tier hunter. The hooded figure stares him down with a glowing red eye, asking if he's ever truly known fear. The captain looms over the battlefield from high above, evaluating his target from a distance. Purple sparks dance before Chan-seok's eyes as he asks if the man truly gives a damn about his subordinate's condition. Meanwhile, Jae-hyun is still gasping for his last breaths as the black flames continue to eat away at what little remains of him. The captain doesn't miss a beat, telling Chan-seok to put out the fire before it's too late. Chan-seok realizes what's happening. The guy in the hood is literally pumping his own mana into Jae-hyun to keep him alive. He thinks back to that arrow. If it had been aimed a few inches higher, he wouldn't even be standing right now. Jae-hyun looks like a shell of his former self, eyes glazed over as the mana barely holds him together. He lets out a faint groan, barely conscious of the world around him. In a blur of movement, the captain grabs his subordinate and moves him to safety. He gives a simple "good job" to the fallen man. Chanseok is stunned. The distance between them vanished in a split second. The captain explains the consequences. Jae-hyun is crippled, destined for a wheelchair if he survives. He admits his orders are to take Chanseok alive, which is the only reason he's still breathing. He draws back his bow again, mana swirling around the arrow. As long as the heart is beating, he doesn't care about the rest. Chanseok doesn't flinch. He tells him to go ahead and try, because he'd rather die than be anyone's puppet. The two lock eyes, the air heavy with the threat of another shot. But the captain decides to pull back for now. He needs to figure out the secret behind those flames first. He mentions that while everyone thought the rifts were uncontrollable, he's found a way to master them. A chilling promise follows. It's only a matter of time before Chanseok falls under his control too. And just like that, he vanishes, leaving only a trail of dust and silence behind. Chanseok lets out a frustrated sigh. He realizes he's just stumbled into a fight with someone who has a seriously nasty temper. The situation just got a whole lot more complicated. Han Sang-ah limps toward him, asking if those guys are specifically hunting for his unique skill. She points out that they must know his history, or they would have just kidnapped him while he was out cold. Chanseok walks off, telling her to start thinking about what these terrorists are actually trying to achieve. Han Sang-ah wonders if the Korean government would even care if they cleared this rift. Yu Chanseok thinks it's worse. The higher-ups might actually be backing these terrorists. Sang-ah is floored. The group claimed they could control the rifts, but Chanseok tells her to just play dumb for now. She admits she's a terrible liar, which isn't exactly a great trait for a secret mission. Chanseok tells her to stay put. He's going into the belly of the beast alone. She hesitates, asking if he's really okay with her sitting this one out. Chanseok doesn't want her in there. He has no idea what kind of horrors those guys have cooked up. But he's about to find out. He tells her to just focus on recovering until he makes it back. He takes the plunge, diving straight into the darkness. Welcome to the Tsushima Grade 2 Corrosion Rift, featuring a massive, creepy castle. He steps inside, the air immediately feeling different. He runs a hand along the wall, checking the structure. For a Grade 2 rift, the place feels unusually real. Most undead-infested castles feel soft and squishy, but this one is rock solid. The yin energy is thick here, making every breath feel like a needle to the lungs. He can feel it. The core of the rift is right behind the next set of doors. He tries to shake off the bad vibes. Thinking about death before a fight is never a good sign. But he knows the stakes. One slip-up in a place like this and he's done for. He pushes the heavy doors open, the wood groaning in protest. The first thing he sees is a strange, green glow coming from the center of the room. It's a massive cauldron, bubbling over with some kind of toxic-looking soup. He stops in his tracks, wondering if this is actually the rift's core. It's definitely not the treasure room he was hopping for. Suddenly, something grabs his foot, nearly making him jump out of his skin. A man, a mirror image of himself, has half his body melted away into an unrecognizable mass, gasping for help with his final breaths. He's trying to crawl away from the edge of that bubbling pot. He's sobbing, saying his legs are completely gone, and the pain is unbearable. He desperately begs for salvation from whatever nightmare he's caught in. Chanseok stares in horror as the man is dragged back toward the green light. Another splash. Someone else falls into the vat, their pleas for help cut short. The liquid churns as they sink beneath the surface. Whatever is in that pot, it's devouring them alive. A pale, decaying hand grips the rim, but it's not a victim this time. An undead creature, freshly cooked and oozing green liquid, pulls itself out of the broth. Chanseok realizes the cauldron is used to create undead from living people. A memory of an old man flashes in his mind, asking the same desperate question: why? Flashes of a burning village and people screaming for mercy fill his head. Chanseok gags, the smell of rotting flesh and chemicals finally hitting him full force. He looks at the cauldron with pure loathing. These people aren't just terrorists, they're monsters. He senses something else approaching, another sacrifice for the pot. Spectral blue flames flicker on the floor as heavy footsteps echo through the hall. Through the darkness, the entity senses a fierce and familiar energy drawing closer. Cloaked in spectral green flames, the samurai corrosion creature, Boss, acknowledges the arrival of a true warrior. The undead samurai slowly starts to draw his blade. He tells Chanseok that he plans to temper the steel with his blood. Chanseok can feel the insane amount of pressure in the air, making his hair stand on end. He wonders how the hooded man from before was able to control a monster this powerful. Before he can finish the thought, the creature lunges forward in a blur. This thing is on a completely different level than anyone else he's faced. He knows that even a single mistake here will be fatal. The protagonist grits his teeth, focusing every ounce of his spirit to counterattack, but the lethal blade is already closing in on his throat. He pivots just in time to dodge, but the monster's speed is truly overwhelming, so fast it's almost beyond belief. It's way faster than he expected, catching him off guard. The samurai mocks him, nodding that his lifeline seems to be long. Chanseok realizes he needs to end this quickly, before his weaknesses are exposed. He decides to go for everything in a single, decisive strike. The samurai's eye flares with a sickly green light. A flash of steel cuts through the air. Their weapons collide in a massive shower of sparks. Chanseok is stunned when he sees the result. His strongest attack was blocked like it was absolutely nothing. He didn't even see the monster move its blade to defend itself. The creature explains that a truly fast attack should always be invisible. The katana is already hovering inches from his face. Blood sprays as the first clean hit connects. He can't believe the thing has the capacity to move even faster. The samurai notes that Chanseok is doing a good job of protecting his vitals. It challenges him to try and block the next set of strikes. Another slash rips through him, sending a fresh spray of blood flying. Chanseok is barely managing to stay on his feet. The undead warrior towers over him, completely dominant. The protagonist feels his grip on his weapon faltering. He looks up at his opponent, refusing to give in yet. Dark energy begins to swirl around his body. He's forced to tap into the paradox flame, even though it won't work as an attack against this target. He stands his ground as the situation continues to spiral out of control. The monster is curious to see exactly what it'll take to finally break him. It tightens its grip on the katana hilt. A sudden flurry of slashes tears right through Chanseok's body. He realizes that every single muscle in his frame has just been shredded. His body starts to fail as he slumps forward. The samurai prepares to finish the job once and for all. But Chanseok suddenly manages to swing back with everything he has. He almost blacked out, but he noticed that the creature intentionally missed his head and neck. He uses the paradox flame to jumpstart his recovery and manages to slip behind the monster. Chanseok thinks he finally sees an opening as he slips into the boss's blind spot. But the creature isn't finished talking yet. Before the protagonist can land a blow, the monster tells him he's way too slow. Blood splatters across the room as the samurai counters in an instant. A single drop hits the floor, then another as Chanseok struggles to stay conscious. The boss stands over him, looking down at his broken opponent. Chanseok can barely breathe, gasping for any air he can get. His face is a complete mess of blood and sweat. He forces himself to break free from the monster's grip and locks eyes with the beast once again. The samurai notes how lucky he is that the last strike didn't kill him. But Chanseok isn't buying it, calling the thing out for holding back on purpose just to keep him alive. He demands to know if the creature is just toying with him out of pity. The undead warrior admits he could have ended it if he were still the man he used to be. He reveals that he can't even remember his own name, having lost almost all his memories from his past life. He explains that the memory loss created gaps in his fighting style that proved to be fatal. After being defeated by a mysterious man, he was fitted with a disgraceful shackle around his neck to control him. Chanseok realizes this guy is in the exact opposite situation as him, being a puppet for the group he's hunting. The samurai touches his collar, lamenting that he's lost far too much. Not just his name, but his entire identity has been wiped clean. Even the very reason he ever picked up a sword in the first place has vanished. Now the only thing left inside him is a deep, sorrowful resentment. The ground begins to shake as the energy in the room shifts. Chanseok can feel the pressure mounting and wonders what's coming next. The creature asks if its current state seems truly pitiful. A dark aura begins to form around his core. It reveals a terrifying new form, with eyes covering its entire cloak as it leans into its resentment. Chanseok can sense the malice thickening, but he also notices something else. Even though the power is growing, the samurai has lost most of the technique and experience that made him so dangerous. He calculates that if he can survive a single strike, he might actually have a path to victory. To take down a foe like this, he knows there's only one option left. Chanseok unleashes his full power, wreathed in black flames as he prepares for the final exchange. Chanseok stands his ground, while the swordsman waits with composed dignity in the distance. The swordsman glowing eyes pierce through the gloom, watching his opponent's every move. Black flames swirl around Chanseok, sealing his wounds and refilling his mana pool. The swordsman notices something off about the black fire, sensing it's burning more than just physical matter. Chanseok smirks, explaining that his flame is conceptual. It targets the very idea of an object. He admits that while it sounds invincible, his current output is actually pretty limited. The price of conceptual power is steep. The greater the scale and number of targets, the more devastating the mana drain becomes, demanding absolute mastery, lest the user be consumed by their own power. Using it on such a massive scale is nearly impossible to control and carries a high risk of backlash. He recalls having to hold back against Kim Jae-hyun, making sure he didn't accidentally incinerate the guy entirely. Chanseok compares his past strength to a greatsword, while his current state is nothing more than a fruit knife. As he reflects, the image of the old knight, a burly man with a thick, massive beard, flashes through his mind. He's been playing it safe so far, but he realizes it's time to stop holding back. Chanseok decides to target the durability of the temple itself. The swordsman just stares at him, clearly having no idea what he's talking about. Chanseok decides he's done with the explanations and gets ready to move. The swordsman's glowing pupils track every movement, his expression unchanging. The two clash with an earth-shattering explosion. In his new state, Chanseok's strike is so fast and powerful that it shreds the swordsman's body and the stone walls alike as the battle truly erupts. The swordsman grunts in pain as a chunk of his body is torn away, while the ground beneath his feet suddenly loses its form and crumbles like paper. Chanseok tells him to try and wrap his head around it while he's being pummeled. In an instant, the opponent's body is fully restored. Chanseok finds himself curious to see the limits of what his current self can achieve against such a formidable foe. The swordsman's eyes flare with a cold green light as he prepares for the next exchange. "Let's take this elsewhere," he suggests, ready to change the pace of the fight. The heavy architecture of the temple looms above them as the battle escalates and shifts. The entire floor shatters into pieces, sending debris flying in every direction as they move outside. A massive burst of energy explodes from the center of their duel, lighting up the sky. Both warriors launch into the air, their weapons clashing amidst falling rubble. Streaks of mana cut through the air as they trade high-speed blows across the horizon. A blinding white light erupts as their powers collide once again in a massive shockwave. Slashes of orange energy fill the sky like a web of destruction, cutting through everything in their path. The swordsman swings his katana with terrifying speed and precision. Chanseok parries the blow, his spear catching the blade in a shower of sparks. They're locked in a power struggle, their eyes fixed on each other in a moment of intense focus. The katana's blade grinds against the steel shaft of the spear, as both warriors pour every ounce of their strength into seizing the upper hand. The katana slices right through the protagonist's spear, as the swordsman's movements grow increasingly aggressive and unpredictable. Chanseok keeps a close eye on his opponent, waiting for the split second to strike. A terrifying, pitch-black silhouette looms as the swordsman prepares his ultimate strike, his bloodlust radiating so intensely it feels like the very air is freezing. The mountainside stands silent for a split second before that devastating blow. Then a clean slash cuts straight through the landscape and the clouds above. Huge fragments of rock begin to float, drifting through the air like leaves in the wind. A flash of energy suddenly ignites in the center of the flying boulder, making it glow intensely for a split second before shattering into a million pieces. It turns out Chanseok was lunging from that direction, spear-tip first, aiming directly at the target above. A massive pillar of dust and energy shoots up from the point of impact on the ground. Suspended in midair, the swordsman looks down in shock as Chanseok rockets up from the ground, the sheer momentum of his charge catching him completely off guard. His glowing blue eyes widen in sheer terror, completely overwhelmed by the destructive power Chanseok is unleashing upon him. Chanseok lunges forward, his weapon crackling with power as he closes the distance. The two warriors collide in midair, Chanseok's blinding speed followed by a barrage of energy spear tips. The spears of light shred the swordsman's body into 100 pieces. Despite taking such a fatal blow, the swordsman's body doesn't vanish. Instead, it constantly regenerates. The swordsman lands on a crumbling ledge, staring in disbelief at the destruction around him. He realizes that the energy from Chanseok's attack is relentlessly slowing down his regeneration. This power is unlike anything he has ever encountered, even on legendary battlefields. Standing amidst the ruins, the swordsman demands to know who, or what, his opponent truly is. He stands frozen as a terrifying truth suddenly flashes before his eyes. High above, a glowing cross-shaped sigil appears in the sky, marking the end of the line. Chanseok points his spear at the distant figure, his focus absolute as he prepares the next move. A grid of glowing light manifests instantly, slicing through space itself. The swordsman is caught in the crosshairs, his form silhouetted against the blinding geometric slashes. Sharp energy blades relentlessly tear through the swordsman's body with surgical precision. Pushed to his absolute limit, the swordsman undergoes a horrific transformation as the erosion sets in. He lets out a bone-chilling roar as his body warps into a massive shadow beast covered in glowing eyes. Chanseok doesn't back down, diving headfirst toward the newly transformed monster. He grits his teeth, his expression hardening as he prepares for the final collision. The monstrous shadow of the swordsman leaps upward, meeting the descending hero with feral rage. Their clash shatters the silence, sending waves of energy rippling through the battlefield. Chanseok strains against the beast's raw power, the force of the strike nearly blowing him back. That entity is being ripped to shreds as well, yet its form remains a turbulent void of writhing darkness and a sea of luminous eyes that refuse to stay destroyed. Ignoring their own mangled bodies, both warriors grit their teeth and continue to ramp up the intensity of the battle. Their gazes lock in a final, high-tension stare-down as the energy around them reaches a breaking point. A violent surge of purple flames erupts from the ground, engulfing the rocky terrain. The conceptual fire roars through the area, turning everything into a landscape of violet destruction. In the heat of battle, a flicker of memory from his combat days flashes through Chanseok's mind. He recalls posing a profound question about the very nature of combat. His fellow knight had once asked how he would handle a warrior whose strength matched his own. The memory takes him back to a desolate, wind-swept cliffside under a setting sun. The veteran knight looked up at the sky, pondering for a moment before slowly echoing the hypothesis. What if a warrior truly appeared whom even I could not defeat, someone whose strength was perfectly equal to my own? The young knight waited intently, his gaze fixed on him in absolute focus. The veteran warrior explained that in a clash between equals, there can only ever be one absolute outcome. Returning to the present, Chanseok has completely relaxed, proving the very words he spoke in the past. The swordsman's grotesque face is now almost entirely decomposing. A final, earth-shaking impact signals the end of their struggle. Chanseok smirks as the dust settles, reaffirming the only truth that matters. As expected, I am the strongest. Chanseok gazes back at the ruins where the boss had just fallen, Standing amidst the ruins, he examines his sword and the final fragments of the boss's body as they decompose. His hard work finally pays off as a blue reward chest materializes right before his eyes. He's relieved to see the loot mechanics work exactly like they did in his old world. Inside the chest, a strange golden artifact is glowing. He pulls out a spearhead, but it's far too short to be considered a proper spear. He grips the handle, sensing there's more to it than meets the eye. With a sudden burst of mana, the blade shoots out, extending into a polearm that seems to stretch on forever. It's a mana-responsive weapon, definitely a useful upgrade for his arsenal. He realizes rewards are based on the number of entrants, which makes him think. He should have brought Han Sanga along just to park her somewhere safe while he cleared the place. He wonders if her own sword even survived that crazy battle. Later that night at the shelter, things have finally quieted down. Han Sanga is out cold, finally getting some much-needed rest. She stirs slightly as someone enters the room. Chanseok drops a high-quality sword by her bed with a quiet thud. She wakes up, confused to see him standing there in the dark. He plays it cool, claiming he just found it and she should put it to good use. She draws the blade, immediately noticing how well-maintained and sharp it is. She calls out after him, worried that he risked his life in such a dangerous place just to get this for her. He just tells her to shut up and be glad she got some rest while he was busy. But as soon as he turns around, the toll of the day finally hits him. He faceplants straight onto the floor, completely drained of energy. Han Sanga can only watch in shock as the guy who just cleared a rift collapses like a sack of potatoes. Word of what he did spreads like wildfire, because the gap between Grade 3 and Grade 2 rifts is massive. A solo clear of a Grade 2 source is basically unheard of for a rookie. On the streets, people are glued to their phones, arguing over whether the rumors are even real. Chanseok's face is plastered all over the city's giant screens as the latest viral sensation. Back at the hospital, his phone is blowing up with so many messages it's basically unusable. He looks out the window at the media circus outside and realizes his days of flying under the radar are over. There's a knock at the door, pulling him away from the window. A woman introduces herself as Jasujiang, representing a group called Embargo Tower. She's been footing his medical bills, but Chanseok admits he's never even heard of her organization. She tries to play the polite host, asking if he needs anything for his stay. But he knows those expensive hospital bills come with a price tag. He cuts the small talk and tells her to get straight to whatever she actually wants. She just smiles and asks if he likes cake before diving into business. She shows him a prototype for a mana-powered shield generator designed to protect the masses. As they sit down over some strawberry cake, she starts laying out the job. She wants him to escort this world-changing tech across the continent. It's a mission to bring protection to areas hunters can't reach, potentially saving humanity. Chanseok listens intently, weighing the risks of such a massive request. Chanseok sits across from Jasujiang in the hospital room, realizing the massive scope of what she's asking. She mentions they're already gathering a team of high-level hunters for the job. He checks over the mission details, surprised to hear that even big names like Janabi are on board. This isn't just a simple transport job, it's a global event. Jasujiang lays out the logistics. They'll be taking the shield generator across the continent by train, starting from Vladivostok all the way to the Netherlands. A map shows the massive route they'll be covering, stretching across Russia and into Europe before reaching the final stop in Dover, UK. When Chanseok asks why they're going that far, she explains the geopolitical nightmare. A powerful warlord group called Ristorante controls a massive chunk of territory from Italy to North Africa. She points out that the UK is one of the few places left with any stability, mostly thanks to being an island nation protected by the sea. But the rest of Europe is pure chaos. Governments have collapsed, leaving hunter companies to rule like small-time kings. They'll also be bringing relief supplies to the people stuck in the middle. Chanseok catches on quick. With anarchy and warlords everywhere, that train is going to be the biggest target on the continent. Jasujiang doesn't sugarcoat it. She knows people will be coming for them. She asks if he's ever left the country before, and he admits this is his first time heading to Europe. She warns him that things over there are way more horrific than he can imagine. Jasujiang explains that Embargo Tower is handling the data for the mission, and she'll be personally joining the transport team. Chanseok keeps eating his cake, thinking it'll be good to have a familiar face around, even if she basically decided his participation for him. He finally gives his answer, but with one major condition. Han Sang-ah has to come with them as his partner. He explains that she's the only one he truly trusts after everything they went through on Tsushima Island. Jasujiang is more than happy to agree, figuring a hunter he trusts is better for everyone's safety. Chanseok leans back, thinking this deal actually works out pretty well for his own plans, too. He stands up and offers a handshake, officially joining the high-stakes mission. Behind the smile, he's already calculating how this move will help him grow his influence faster than anyone expects. Soon after, a helicopter touches down on the rooftop, the sound of the blades drowning out everything else. As they board, Chanseok realizes how much his life has changed. The association is mobilizing a whole helicopter just for a meeting because he cleared that Grade 2 rift solo. The association president meets them, an elderly man with a sharp gaze who looks impressed by Chanseok's performance. He tells him that expectations are now a certainty. He promises the full support of the Hunter Association, which Chanseok knows will make his future moves a whole lot easier. Chanseok looks at the old man and wonders just how much he actually knows about the entities behind the scenes. He watches the association president carefully, questioning if the man wants to fix this broken world, or if he's perfectly happy with the way things are now. He steps into the cabin of the helicopter, ready to meet the rest of the crew. Waiting inside is Lee Si-yoon, a top-ranked hunter looking sharp in a black suit. She greets him like an old acquaintance. She mentions that his reputation has already reached the furthest corners of the country, and Chanseok just jokes that he's getting used to being famous. As the city fades away below them, Chanseok asks where they're heading, and Si-yoon reveals that their next stop is a military base. The news catches Chanseok off guard, but Si-yoon explains that the South Korean military is officially backing the Embargo Tower mission. Chanseok realizes the political stakes. If this shield generator works, countries won't have to rely so heavily on independent hunters for defense anymore. He taps his fingers on the table, privately noting that not everyone is thrilled about this new technology. Then he speaks up, asking Si-yoon if she's heard of a group called the Heirs of Dangun. Answering his doubt, Lee Si-yoon labels them as a pack of radical nationalist terrorists who truly believe they're doing the right thing. Chanseok then recounts his past clash with them back on the island. She explains that they're a hardcore Korean-only group that loves to swoop in and disrupt rift-clearing missions whenever they get the chance. A vision of a past enemy flashes through Chanseok's mind. He knows exactly why they're so bitter about the current system. Lee Si-yoon stares him down, her eyes unreadable as the conversation gets heavy. Suddenly, she tosses something small into his hands. It was a piece of pumpkin taffy. Chanseok was just confused as to why she kept trying to stuff him with sweets, completely unaware that this was the top hunter's signature way of shutting people up. She ignores the question and asks him again if he's really never been out of the country. He wonders why everyone is so fixated on his travel history, but he just repeats that this is his first time going this far. Lee Si-yoon leans back with a knowing look, telling him that this mission is going to be a wake-up call for him. As the sun sets, they fly toward the unknown, with Lee Si-yoon's warning lingering in the air. He's about to see the world for what it really is. A sunset hangs over the industrial skyline of Vladivostok as a massive operation begins to take shape. Inside, the conference room is packed with military brass and elite hunters for the final mission briefing. Yu Chanseok looks through the documents, knowing this escort mission is about to become a global spectacle. Lee Si-yoon, the rank 10 hunter, stands by as the tactical details are laid out. Superintendent An Hun-seo takes center stage to explain the logistical nightmare of the Trans-Siberian journey. The plan involves a massive train with 80 cars, most of which are armored containers for supplies and the generator prototype. Chanseok notices that Lee Si-yoon is getting the VIP treatment, with an entire car reserved just for her. The atmosphere is tense as the discussion turns to the security of the shield generator. An Hun-seo suggests that the military should share guard duties to keep everyone fresh for the long haul. But the proposal is shot down instantly. There's no room for outside help on this one. Lee Si-yoon reminds him that every faction on the continent is going to be gunning for that technology. The superintendent can only frown as his offer for military support is firmly rejected. The rules are strict. Only members of the designated guild are allowed near the cargo. The military officials look frustrated, realizing they're being kept at arm's length by the hunters. Lee Si-yoon shuts her eyes, signalizing that the discussion is over. A map outlines the grueling route from Vladivostok all the way to the UK, crossing through some of the most dangerous corrosion zones. As soon as she heard the plan to transport by train through these godforsaken lands, Si-yoon immediately compared the mission and the threat of bandits to a cliché old-school Western movie. The situation is even worse than they thought, with 5 European warlords already marked as hostile threats. The soldiers in the room are visibly shaken, wondering how they're supposed to survive 2 weeks of constant attacks. Most of them are convinced that pulling this off is actually impossible. Lee Si-yoon remains calm, watching the room descend into a minor panic. She breaks the tension by promising that the train will reach its destination, no matter who stands in their way. Operation D-Day begins as the massive train prepares to pull out of the frozen station in Russia. The platform is a sea of people, as crews and guards scramble to board before the departure. Chanseok walks along the tracks, the bitter cold already biting at the air. He realizes the train is even longer than he imagined, stretching over a kilometer into the snowy mist. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to him, stopping him in his tracks. Han Sang-ah is already geared up and waiting for the mission to start. She teases him about his luxury first-class ticket, while she's been stuck with the commoners in second class. But Chanseok immediately uses Lee Si-yoon's private carriage as a shield against the teasing, reflecting on the massive gap between his own rank and the true elite. Ja Soo-jeong arrives at the platform to see the team off. She greets Chanseok, nodding that he's remarkably early for the departure. Chanseok is impressed by how much effort Embargo Tower has put into the security of this transport. The train cars are literally built like tanks, designed to withstand the worst the wasteland can throw at them. Ja Soo-jeong explains that the entire train is clad in depleted uranium armor for maximum defense. Despite the heavy plating, Chanseok knows the real defense is having a powerhouse like Lee Si-yoon on board. With everything in place, it feels like nothing could possibly go wrong. But less than 10 minutes into the trip, a swarm of flying eye monsters descends on the train. One of the hunters, face bloodied and screaming, calls for immediate backup at car 57. Chanseok doesn't wait for orders and leaps onto the roof of the moving train. The attack came way sooner than anyone expected, throwing the defense into immediate chaos. He swings his weapon to clear the sky, but the swarm seems endless as more creatures dive in from the blizzard. Chanseok struggles against the swarm, wishing the mission's heavy hitter, Lee Si-yoon, was out here fighting with him. The mission is a logistical nightmare. Because the railway is trashed, the train can only move as fast as the repair crews can fix the tracks. These workers are sitting ducks for corrosion creatures, so a high-rank hunter like Lee Si-yoon is forced to stay behind and guard them. Chanseok is frustrated that their best fighter is being wasted on guard duty instead of clearing the path ahead. Another winged monster dives in. He barely manages to swat it away. Looking at the endless swarm, he realizes this is going to be a very long day of babysitting the tracks. The scene shifts to Khabarovsk, Russia, where the landscape is painted with fresh blood in the snow. A massive, shark-like monster is dragged across the tundra like it's nothing more than a fresh catch. The man responsible is a mountain of muscle in heavy armor, his face set in a cold, indifferent stare. A man in traditional Korean robes, Lee Ha-yun, approaches through the blizzard. He finds the Russian warlord facing a toothy monster that is lunging forward to attack him. But he pays no mind, turning instead to watch the city's ruins looming in the distance. a silent testament to the lawlessness of this region. The warlord doesn't appreciate the intrusion and unleashes a powerful strike that shatters the air. The impact leaves a crater in the snow, but Ha-yun doesn't even flinch. He simply smiles, nodding that it's been a long time since they last met. Ha-yun wastes no time and gets straight to the point. He has a job for the man known as the ruler of Khabarovsk. The warlord, Nikolai Baranov, looks down at the intruder with sheer contempt. He's annoyed that the visitor's arrival woke up the monster he was planning to have for dinner. Nikolai isn't interested in a payday, claiming he already has everything he needs. Ha-yun is unfazed, knowing exactly how to bait someone with a thirst for a real challenge. He mentions the special train that just departed from Vladivostok, scheduled to cross through this territory soon. Nikolai laughs it off as a joke, knowing the tracks have been broken for years. Ha-yun explains that the train is moving in real time, using mana-awakened crews to repair the path as they go. This revelation catches Nikolai's attention. He asks what could possibly be valuable enough to warrant such an insane effort. Ha-yun tells him the cargo isn't his concern, but the person guarding it definitely should be. Nikolai's eyes widen when he hears the name of his target. Ha-yun confirms it. The Candy Lady of Janabi LLC is the one holding the line. The prospect of fighting the rank 10 hunter, Lee Si-yoon, finally brings a bloodthirsty grin to Nikolai's face. He assumes it's a simple robbery and suggests just blowing up the entire train. Ha-yun quickly corrects him. He has much more specific plans for the cargo than just destruction, while silently cursing the man's simple mind. He produces a small electronic terminal, explaining that Nikolai needs to break into the main car and connect it to the equipment inside. Ha-yun adds that once the data is secured, Nikolai is free to do whatever he wants with the remaining cargo. Nikolai lets out a roar of laughter, officially accepting the contract. For him, the tech is just an excuse. He's more interested in the slaughter that follows. He can't wait to turn the Siberian tracks into a graveyard, right in front of the legendary Lee Si-yoon. Yu Chanseok stands amidst the carnage, his spear resting on his shoulder after single-handedly wiping out a massive wave of monsters. The other hunters are in total shock. They can't wrap their heads around how a rookie could slaughter hundreds of enemies all by himself. Chanseok slams the butt of his spear into the frozen ground, the impact ringing out through the snowy silence. To the exhausted hunters watching him, Chanseok seems like more of a monster than the things they were just fighting. He glances back at the group slumped over and gasping for air. Seeing them so battered after a short skirmish makes him realize they're pretty much useless. He closes his eyes for a moment, deciding right then that he'll have to treat this mission like he's fighting alone. Han Sang-ah barks at the others to get up, reminding them that the mission isn't over and they can't let their guard down. Chanseok smirks over at Han Sang-ah. In his mind, she's the only one in this entire group who's actually worth anything. Suddenly, his expression shifts. He senses something off in the distance. Up ahead, a massive obstacle has been placed directly on the tracks. It's a deliberate blockade, and the train is heading straight for it. Chanseok wonders if it was just a natural avalanche, but the timing is far too perfect. Static crackles in his earpiece as the control room reports the obstacle, but says they're proceeding as normal for now. The channel is suddenly hijacked by a sharp, authoritative voice. It's the commander, Lee Si-yoon, and she sounds dead serious. She doesn't hesitate, shouting a direct command to the control room to stop the train immediately. The train screeches to a halt, snow spraying everywhere. Si-yoon knows this isn't a natural disaster, it's an ambush. A brilliant, menacing light flares up from the side of the tracks, cutting through the blizzard. Something strikes the side of the train with immense force, the metal groaning under the heavy impact. Si-yoon draws her massive broadsword, ready to face whatever is coming out of the dark. A beam of concentrated energy blasts towards Si-yoon, exploding against her position. In the distance, figures in high-tech suits begin to descend from the snowy cliffs, surrounding the stopped train. Sang-ah's eyes widen in shock as she asks where they came from. Chanseok remains eerily calm, telling her she should have read the briefing. Nikolai Baranov's bald, scarred head comes into focus at the front of the horde. This is Nikolai's armed gang, a notorious mercenary force 500 men strong. Before Si-yoon can even take a step, she notices something fluttering in the wind toward her. Several paper talismans inscribed with strange glowing runes are flying through the air, heading straight for the commander. The talismans stick to her, glowing with a sinister purple light. Si-yoon freezes, realizing too late that this is high-level sealing magic. She tries to force her mana to flow, but her eyes narrow as she feels her internal energy being choked off. Purple electricity crackles around the talismans, weaving a complex magical web over her entire body. Sang-ah watches in horror as the commander's presence suddenly weakens. She calls out to Si-yoon, sensing that something has gone horribly wrong. Si-yoon grits her teeth, her voice strained as she realizes the full extent of the trap. A massive hexagonal barrier erupts around her, fully manifesting the seal and locking her powers away. The broadcast system on the train flares to life, sending a panicked message to all hunters on board. The announcement confirms their worst fears. They're under attack, and Commander Lee Si-yoon is officially out of the fight. The hunters look out at the snow to see hundreds of mercenaries closing in. They're outnumbered 10 to 1. Chan-seok steps forward, his expression cold and focused. The commander might be down, but he has no intention of retreating. Si-yoon looks on, her eyes sharp despite being trapped. She wants them to hold the line and hunt the enemy down. Chan-seok doesn't wait for a plan. He tells Sang-ah to follow him and leaps straight off the side of the train into the freezing night. The other hunters are stunned. They can't believe he's just charging into a 500-man army on his own. Seeing the rookie dive in, one of the hunters grins through the fear. He decides they can't let the kids have all the fun and tells the others to move out. Trapped inside the purple barrier, Si-yoon stares down the enemy. She's already looking for a way to break this seal and get back to the front lines. A mysterious figure in traditional robes, Lee Ha-yeon, stands before her. He tells her it won't be that easy to escape his magic. Si-yoon glares at him, demanding to know if he's the one behind the seal. Lee Ha-yeon introduces himself with a calm, almost polite smile. He reveals he's a descendant of Dangun, a lineage steeped in ancient myth. He keeps that smug look on his face as he explains the connection between them. Turns out, they're distant relatives, which makes running into her here a bit of a family reunion. Purple energy surges through the air with a violent crackle. The pressure from the mana seal is immense. Lee Si-yoon's massive broadsword can't take the strain. The blade shatters into glowing fragments under the weight of the magical suppression. Si-yoon looks down at her empty hilt, her eyes wide with genuine shock. She wasn't expecting her weapon to give way like that. Lee Ha-yeon waves a hand dismissively. He tells her this seal isn't something she can just brute force her way out of, and she's better off surrendering now that she's unarmed. But Si-yoon doesn't look like she's about to quit. She asks why he's making such a big deal out of a single broken sword. A blue light begins to coalesce around her hands, a strange digital effect shimmering over the hilt. Lee Ha-yeon's smile falters. He doesn't like the look of that glowing energy. In an instant, a brand new blade manifests in her grip. It's a perfect copy of the one that just shattered, manifesting right within the purple hexagonal barriers. This is the power of the mirror ring, a grade 1 artifact Si-yoon obtained after clearing a high-level erosion core. It's a specialized piece of gear that lets her register one weapon. The moment that item breaks, a duplicate is instantly placed back into her hand. Si-yoon mocks him right back, looking completely unfazed. She asks if he really planned on just smashing her sword until the seal broke. She tightens her grip on the new hilt, ready to show him exactly what a brutish fighter can do. With a fierce look in her eyes, she calls him out, saying his rude attitude is exactly why he'll never be popular with the ladies. Out in the snowy wasteland, the battle is just beginning. The mercenaries are closing in on all sides. A sudden burst of laughter echoes across the battlefield, catching the defenders off guard. High above the snow, Nikolai Baranov hovers in the air, his high-tech suit glowing with power. He looks down at the handful of hunters, mocking their pitiful numbers. Nikolai's face is a mask of arrogance. He tells them he's the one who decides who lives and who dies tonight, offering them one last chance to surrender. Chan-seok and Han Sang-ah look up at the flying giant. Chan-seok immediately notices something strange. He can't sense a single drop of mana from the guy, despite the fact that he's flying. He recognizes the technology. It's a suit from the Predator Project, a 10-year-old initiative designed to let ordinary people fight without needing mana. The suit hums with mechanical energy. It even comes with a built-in translation function, so Nikolai can talk trash in any language. Chanseok's eyes narrow. He wonders how a top-secret South Korean military prototype ended up in the hands of a Russian gang leader. Beside him, Sang-ah is trembling. The reality of the situation is starting to sink in. This isn't just about hunting monsters anymore. They have to kill people. Chanseok notices her hesitation. He coldly tells her that if she can't handle the idea of fighting humans, she should just stay back. He reminds her that these people are trying to kill them regardless of her moral dilemma. Sang-ah tries to harden her heart. She watches a mercenary charge and tells herself that these guys are no different from the mindless monsters they usually face. She takes a deep breath, focusing on the target ahead. She moves in a blur, her blade finding its mark. The snow is sprayed with blood as she takes her first human life. Chanseok watches her, his gaze intense. He warns her to just do what she has to and not let the guilt consume her. His expression is devoid of any remorse. He tells her the feeling will eventually fade, whether it takes a few days or a month. The silence of the snowy night is shattered by the sounds of a massacre. Gang members scream as their lines are torn apart. It's a violent whirlwind of blood and steel, a chaotic mess where nobody is safe. In the middle of all this gore, Chanseok walks through the battlefield like he's just taking a stroll. He doesn't look bothered at all. His eyes are dead calm while weapons clash all around him. His team is getting pushed back hard. Even though they've got the skill, they're just completely outnumbered by these thugs. Chanseok knows there's only one way to end this quickly. He needs to take out their leader. Right on cue, Nikolai Baranov makes his entrance. He's already got his hands on one of the defenders. The bald giant recognizes the kid. Word about the rookie from Korea has apparently traveled pretty fast. Chanseok's a bit surprised that even Russian thugs are keeping tabs on him these days. Nikolai doesn't waste time talking. He lunges forward with a glowing blade. The mercenary mocks the lack of talent in Korea after seeing the kid's initial reaction. Chanseok has to admit, this guy is fast and heavy-handed. Not only is he quick, but that power suit looks like it can take a serious beating without a scratch. The protagonist realizes this won't be an easy win. This guy is a lot trickier than the average monster. But Nikolai has no idea who he's dealing with. Chanseok's been through much worse than a high-tech suit. They clash in a flash of sparks. Neither side is giving an inch. Nikolai is getting pissed. He expected to squash this kid in seconds. The giant fires up his thrusters, screaming that he's going to finish this right now. Chanseok notices something weird. For someone claiming to be going all out, the guy is definitely holding back. He deduces that the mercenary is worried about damaging the cargo. They need that shield generator intact. Nikolai keeps up the pressure, swinging with mechanical force. Everything about this ambush feels too organized. It's like these guys knew exactly who was on the train. A Russian boss in a Korean military suit and a SEAL master showing up at the perfect time. That's not a coincidence. Chanseok realizes there are too many red flags to ignore. There's definitely a mole in the operation. Nikolai looks down and sees something that finally makes him nervous. A black flame is eating through his armor. Chanseok decides he's done playing around. He's going to burn through his weapon's durability to end this instantly. He swings, his blade glowing with intense blue energy. The mercenary's face goes pale. He realizes too late that he's completely outmatched. Nikolai tries to curse him out, but Chanseok is already moving faster than the suit can track. He activates blue trajectory. The air around him starts to warp from the sheer speed. It's a 16-hit combo. The final blow cannon sends a shockwave through Nikolai's entire frame. The giant freezes. He can hear the expensive metal of his suit finally starting to snap. There's a massive crack right down the middle. Nikolai panics, realizing he needs to retreat and find cover. He tries to strike a deal, offering to help break the seal on the candy lady if the kid stops attacking. But Chanseok isn't interested in bargaining with a corpse. He drives the final strike home. A single strike cleaves the Russian butcher in two. The power suit explodes into fragments. The invincible commander is officially done for. Chanseok just sighs. Dealing with these guys was more of a chore than anything else. He stands over the wreck, telling the dying man that he doesn't need any help. Suddenly, a familiar purple energy starts sparking nearby. The ground shakes with a new power. The remaining mercenaries stop in their tracks. They can feel the atmosphere changing. Confidence turns into pure terror. They realize they've just lost their leader and something else is waking up. On the other hand, the hunters' faces begin to light up with joy. Chanseok glances back at the train with a smirk. He knew she could handle it on her own. Lee Si-yoon finally breaks through the seal, her eyes glowing as her mana floods back into the battlefield. The Trans-Siberian train sits stalled in the frozen wasteland. Bodies of the mercenaries are scattered across the snow, marking the end of the ambush. The hunters gather around, finally catching their breath after the massacre. Lee Si-yoon is all smiles, handing Chanseok a shard of the broken seal as a reward. The protagonist asks if that seal master guy was really one of the descendants of Dangun. The commander confirms it, looking a bit frustrated that the guy managed to slip away right after the seal broke. Chanseok looks at the purple crystal fragment in his hand, while the others watch curiously. Then he just pops it into his mouth like it's a piece of candy, leaving everyone speechless. The hunters lose their minds, screaming about how he could possibly eat a mana-sealing artifact. He just chews away with a blank face, wondering why everyone is so worked up. Si-yoon tells them they're overreacting, explaining that most hunters just collect these as trophies. The bystanders can only stare, thinking she's just as crazy as he is. Chanseok's gaze turns cold as he looks over at the train. He watches the military personnel carefully recovering pieces of Nikolai's wrecked power armor. He notices a disturbing detail. Nikolai's gear was actually specialized Korean military equipment. That realization leads to a much darker line of thought. For a mercenary to have this kind of tech, he'd need backing from a faction powerful enough to ignore the government. Or maybe the military itself was quietly letting Nikolai do his dirty work. Looking at the soldiers around them, Chanseok realizes he might not be able to trust anyone on this train. Far away from the tracks, a massive palace hidden in the mountains looms through the clouds. Lee Ha-yun stumbles through the halls, barely able to keep his balance. He's completely drained, cursing his luck for wasting so much mana on a seal that didn't even hold. He approaches a mysterious figure and calls out to his captain. The kid apologizes for his failure, but the man just shrugs it off as a minor setback. He tells the seal master to stop acting like a whipped dog and focus on getting his strength back. The masked man's cold authority is enough to shut down any more apologies. The captain heads toward an elevator, the display ticking up to the first floor. Losing his best men clearly stings more than he's letting on. His single red eye glows with a dangerous obsession over the mana pattern of Chanseok's black flame. The doors chime as he reaches floor 3. He enters a dimly lit lab packed with monitors and calls out to a man named Dr. Seo Jae-woo. The disheveled scientist looks up from his snack, wondering what the boss wants now. The leader gets straight to the point, asking for an update on their secret project. Dr. Seo starts typing away, confident that with enough time and money, anything is possible. The doctor laments that missing out on the shield generator's data was a huge waste of potential. But the captain isn't stressed at all, knowing the journey across Siberia gives them plenty more chances. Back on the train, Chanseok stares out at the horizon, knowing the real fight is only just beginning. The train hurtles through the frozen Siberian landscape. Inside, the command room is in a state of high alert as they tally up their losses. Lee Si-yoon listens grimly to the report. Losing a third of their forces right out of the gate is a massive blow. She orders immediate first aid for the survivors, though real treatment will have to wait for Warsaw. The CEO then asks for the identity of the warlord group controlling the region. It's the Mazurka faction, and she wants contact made with their contracted guild immediately. Her officer is skeptical the warlords will play along so easily. But Si-yoon knows her worth. They won't want to miss out on her future support. Cut to Poland, where the Esprit Hunter Guild is headquartered. A guild member arrives with a cooperation request. Robert Dean, the guild's leader, loses it. He isn't about to take orders from some partner company. But his hunters aren't as arrogant. They know she's cleared top-tier cores on her own. To them, this isn't just any request. It's from Korea's legendary Candy Lady. Robert scoffs, asking if they'd jump into a furnace just because she told them to. One of them answers without a second of hesitation. He'd do exactly that. Robert explodes, calling his men idiots for respecting a hunter who just does commissions for a living. That's when the entire room gathers around him, dead silent. The leader looks around, suddenly realizing his authority is on thin ice. A female hunter makes it clear, if he refuses this request, she's leaving the guild today. Robert's face twitches as he tries to keep his temper in check. He can't believe they're siding with a stranger over their own leader. But another hunter steps forward, explaining that the Candy Lady is just different. He tells a story of how her foundation helped his mother get a life-saving surgery. Others join in, recalling how she saved them from certain death when they were injured in cores. The guild member warns Robert that the company will collapse if everyone walks out at once. He's forced to bite his tongue and comply, his arrogance completely shattered. Back on the train, Lee Si-yoon is deep in thought. She's worried about the injured. Their condition is even worse than reported. They've still got 5 more days of travel ahead of them. All she can do is hope they don't run into any more delays. Of course, that's exactly when the proximity alarm starts blaring. Something is chasing the train. A massive slime is closing the distance fast. The hunters on board scramble, their hearts sinking at the news. Si-yoon grabs her weapon, realizing things are about to get ugly. Yu Chan-seok looks on, asking the obvious question, what exactly is a slime? She explains it's a high-grade entity from a frozen core, nicknamed the refrigerator. Chan-seok is surprised. That place is hundreds of kilometers away from their current position. The erosion zone must have expanded while they were traveling. They head to the roof to face it, and Chan-seok asks if these things are really that dangerous. Si-yoon warns him to be careful. Their bodies are so cold they'll shatter any equipment that touches them. Hunters on the roof aim their bows at the approaching monsters. On command, they let fly a barrage of arrows into the snowy sky. The arrows find their mark, but they just sink harmlessly into the slimes. The creature's magic resistance makes standard attacks completely useless. Chan-seok watches the failed volley with a calm, analytical gaze. Without a way to break through that barrier, they're essentially defenseless. Panic starts to spread among the ranks as the slimes keep closing in. Si-yoon stares ahead, the reality of a failed mission weighing on her. If the train is overrun before they clear the zone, none of them are making it out. Chan-seok steps forward, the only one not losing his cool. He casually offers to take a turn, catching the hunters off guard. He borrowed that hunter's bow right then and there, deciding to ignore proper form and just wing it. Si-yoon watches him, wondering if he can actually do something she can't. Purple energy begins to spiral around his arrow, crackling with intense mana. His plan is simple. If there's resistance, he'll just burn it all away. He releases the shot, and it streaks toward the lead slime like a bolt of lightning. The moment it hits, dark flames explode, eating away at the creature's defenses. The purple fire consumes everything it touches, leaving the monster vulnerable. The hunters are stunned. The slime's legendary resistance has been completely dispelled. Chan-seok doesn't even break a sweat, already looking toward the next move. He tells the others to resume their attack once the flames die down. One of the hunters asks him how such a thing is even possible. Si-yoon looks at him, the pieces of the puzzle starting to fall into place. She wonders if his unique ability is the power to erase anything that lacks a physical form. To her, the man is becoming a complete enigma. She doesn't waste any more time and leaps into the fray. With a powerful swing, she cleaves right through the heart of a slime. Seeing her success, the rest of the hunters join in, finally pushing the monsters back. But just as they think they're winning, a lookout yells about one final, massive slime. Si-yoon's eyes widen as she looks up at the sky. A giant slime orb leaps over the train, aiming to crush the entire team. She knows she could cut it, but the impact would shatter her equipment instantly. If she misses this chance, everyone on the train is as good as dead. She desperately looks for a way to save her people. Chanseok reaches for the hilt of his sword, his movements precise. Normally, a monster that massive and cold would be impossible to bring down. But Chanseok has a much more direct approach in mind. He springs into the air, reducing the giant beast to a harmless mist in one strike. Si-yoon can only stare in awe as the impossible happens right in front of her. Han Sang-ah and the other hunters are left speechless by the sheer scale of his power. A shower of frozen droplets falls onto the roof. They're nothing more than harmless slush now. Chanseok sheathes his blade, casually mentioning that the monster actually tastes like cola. Chanseok adds with a playful glint in his eye that he always did prefer cola-flavored candies, leaving the others to wonder if this man might truly be the one destined to save their broken world. The armored train rumbles through the frozen Siberian landscape, its heavy wheels churning through the deep snow. It pushes forward with a steady rhythm, cutting a path through the white wasteland. The massive vehicle continues its journey, leaving a trail of gray smoke against the backdrop of snowy mountain peaks. It's a lonely trek across the desolate terrain toward its next destination. Inside the cabin, Lee Si-yoon briefs the team on their schedule. They're planning a 3-day stop in Warsaw to treat the wounded and distribute the relief supplies allocated to the area. She explains that the local Mazurka warlord and their contracted hunter company have already promised to cooperate. She looks slightly relieved that this part of the logistics is handled for now. Lee Si-yoon turns to her subordinate to ask about transportation cooperation from the other factions. She wants to know if there's been any word from the warlords besides Mazurka. The officer reports that the other warlords are still staying silent. Si-yoon crosses her arms, realizing they'll just have to keep trying to establish contact. The train finally pulls into Warsaw Central Station, a cavernous terminal in the heart of Poland. The platform is crowded with soldiers and staff waiting for the cargo. Yu Chanseok steps out and takes in the surroundings. He'd heard Poland was doing better than most, but the reality of the station tells a different story. The station floor is a grim sight, filled with people huddled in blankets and looking completely drained. It looks more like a morgue than a transit hub. Despair is everywhere, with bodies lying motionless among the trash and debris scattered across the terminal. The air feels heavy with the scent of decay. Chanseok narrows his eyes as he scans the area. He notices there isn't a single trace of plant life or greenery anywhere in the facility. Broken concrete and yellow "Keep out" tape mark off sections of the ruins. He wonders if the survivors burned everything edible or flammable just to stay alive through the winter. He notices that Lee Si-yoon and the other hunters are completely unfazed by the sight. It seems this level of misery is just the standard reality they're used to seeing. A man in a tan military uniform approaches Chanseok. He stands with a formal posture, ready to introduce himself. The man identifies himself as Warrant Officer Joseph Polanski of the Mazurka faction. Chanseok is surprised to hear him speaking fluent Korean. Joseph offers to show them to their quarters, overlooking a skyline of ruined and hollowed-out skyscrapers. The destruction stretches as far as the eye can see. A sleek black luxury car speeds down the empty highway toward the city's residential district. It's a sharp contrast to the wreckage lining the streets. Chanseok watches the city pass by from the back seat. He realizes that everyone is being moved separately, and it looks like his accommodations will be different from the rest of the team. Joseph breaks the silence, confirming that Chanseok is a freelance hunter. He seems to be sizing up his guest's potential. The officer gets right to the point, suggesting that since Chanseok has no strong ties to Korea, he should consider a long-term position in Poland. He leans forward, trying to sell the idea. He admits that the city's buildings aren't up to Korean standards. However, he claims that here, Chanseok would have far more power than he'd ever find back home. Chanseok looks at the expensive champagne sitting on the console. He wonders if this corrupt power is really what the officer is bragging about. Joseph continues his pitch, knowing that powerful hunters in Korea often feel stifled by public image concerns and legal restrictions. He thinks he knows exactly what a man like Chanseok wants. He drops all pretense and offers a darker kind of freedom. Anything from women to victims he can just beat to death for amusement. He says they can provide whatever he desires. Chanseok stares back, his expression cold and unimpressed. He's already thinking about how much he'd like to punch this guy in the face. The sun sets over the bleak city buildings, casting a long, orange shadow over the urban decay. The city feels silent and forgotten. Chanseok finally arrives at his room and shuts the door behind him, taking in the small space. He drops his gear and exhales, ready to finally rest. He expected something decent, but the place is on the level of a cheap neighborhood motel. He scans the room, finding it lacking in every way. He checks the bathroom next. At least it's clean and functional, which is a rare luxury in a city like this. His dinner is even more disappointing. A few cups of Korean instant noodles sitting on the counter. He wonders if this is really the best they could do. A knock at the door interrupts his thoughts just as he's picking up a cup of noodles. He looks over to find Soojeong waiting outside. She stands there looking a bit sheepish, leaning against the doorframe with her hair in braids. She gives him a quiet greeting. She looks him in the eye, clearly having something on her mind as she starts to explain why she's there. Her expression is awkward but determined. A moment later, the sound of a hot shower fills the room. Steam begins to rise from behind the bathroom door. Soojeong relaxes under the warm water, finally able to wash off the stress of the long trip. She closes her eyes, enjoying the simple comfort. Chanseok sits on the couch outside, listening as she apologizes from the other side of the door. Her own quarters only have a communal bathroom with rusty water. He tells her it's fine and that they're friends, so she shouldn't feel bad about it. He sips his drink, trying to make the situation feel less awkward. However, he decides to use the opportunity to ask her a question in exchange. He looks toward the bathroom door, waiting for her to listen. He wants to know why all the provisions and supplies they've been given are from Korea. Soojeong pauses mid-wash to consider the question. She goes quiet for a second, her face partially obscured by the steam. She thinks about how to explain the messed-up reality of global trade. Chanseok waits for her reply, sensing that the answer reflects the systemic rot of the world's current state. He looks off to the side, his expression thoughtful. She explains that it's all due to the Korean government's policy. Everything from rare earth elements to basic food is imported to Korea first before anything is left for the rest of the world. Yu Chanseok sits on the edge of the bed, listening as Han Soojeong explains the cold reality of global trade. Korea consumes the majority of quality imports, leaving the rest of the world to fight over the scraps. He finds it hard to believe that other nations simply accept this lopsided arrangement. He stares at the floor, processing how much the world's power dynamics have shifted in favor of his home country. Soojeong explains from behind the door that falling out of favor with the Korean government means losing all hunter support. Without government approval, no hunter can get a visa to operate elsewhere. In a world where farming and mining are impossible without hunter protection, every nation is essentially at the mercy of Korea's whims. Chanseok looks toward the supplies on the counter as she speaks. Other countries have no choice but to follow Korea's absurd demands just to survive. They are forced into a cycle of dependency that leaves them with nothing but the bare minimum. The supplies travel from Europe to Korea for processing, only to be sent right back to Europe as low-grade relief. It's an inefficient system designed to maintain control rather than help. They end up receiving spoiled grains, sprouted potatoes, and canned food that's years past its prime. It's the leftovers that even the Korean domestic market wouldn't touch. Chanseok listens intently, his expression hardening. He asks about the actual state of the relief supplies they're transporting. He wonders if they're really just carrying crates of sprouted potatoes across the continent. The thought of such a meager payoff for the danger they've faced is unsettling. Soojeong steps out of the bathroom, her feet still damp from the shower. She's ready to deliver the even grimmer truth about the cargo. She reveals that the reprocessed blended powder number 65 is actually made from industrial food waste. It's a sludge-like substance meant for survival, not nutrition. The waste is dried at extreme temperatures and pulverized into a fine powder. It contains 65% organic matter, effectively recycling what would otherwise be thrown away. Chanseok looks at her, a cold look in his eyes. He's starting to realize the depth of the corruption he's been dragged into. Sujeong admits that Korea has the capacity to send high-quality ingredients if they wanted to. She sighs, looking down at the floor as she questions why they don't. She explains that sending valuable food would only fuel more conflict. Warlords would seize the goods immediately, and the people who actually need help would never see a single bite. Chanseok looks down at the instant noodle cup in his hand. He realizes the system is designed to provide food so worthless that the warlords won't even bother stealing it. If real food is provided, it goes straight to the warlords who either hoard it or sell it to buy more weapons. Relief aid, in its ideal form, often ends up feeding the very wars it's trying to survive. The image of a decorated military leader flashes in his mind, the kind of man who profits from the suffering around him. These are the real monsters ruling the world. Chanseok stares at his scarred hand, realizing that the world he came back to is more rotten than the one he saved. The cycle of greed and power is inescapable. He finally understands Lee Si-yoon's earlier warning. She knew that once he saw the state of things overseas, he would see the world for what it truly is. He admits to himself that he was being too naive. The human rot on Earth is far more pervasive than the monsters he faced in the other world. He realizes there's an organization actively maintaining the erosion cores to ensure this chaotic state of the world continues forever. It's a profitable arrangement for those at the top. Chanseok crushes the empty noodle cup in his fist, a cold determination taking hold. He's figured out exactly what stance he needs to take from now on. He stands up and approaches Sujeong, calling her by her name. He looks ready to act, no longer content with being a passive observer. His eyes glow with a faint, amber light as he asks her for a piece of information. He's done playing by the rules of this broken world. He wants to know the location of the closest warlord faction that hasn't cooperated with their mission. He's going to pay them a visit personally. The scene shifts to Hamburg, Germany, where a helicopter sits on a high-tech landing pad. The Kaiser faction's headquarters is a fortress of military might. A lone figure moves with blinding speed through the facility, his boots hitting the ground as he bypasses the security measures. The attack is swift and silent. Daniel Lewis, the leader of the German warlord faction Kaiser, rushes out onto the deck. He's outraged, demanding to know what's happening to his guards. A subordinate reports that Yu Chanseok is the one responsible. The Korean bastard is tearing through their defenses and demanding to know why they won't cooperate. Daniel screams for him to stop, but Chanseok doesn't even slow down. He lands another heavy blow, sending a guard flying across the deck. He continues his systematic dismantling of the Kaiser guards, showing no hesitation. The warlord's threats of filing a formal complaint fall on deaf ears. Daniel is furious, screaming at Chanseok and asking if he really has a death wish. He can't believe a single hunter is challenging his entire faction. Chanseok reaches out, his hand hovering over one of the fallen men. He tells the warlord that if he's going to try and kill him, he'd better make sure he gets it right the first time. He stares Daniel down with a cold, piercing gaze. If the warlord wants to survive their encounter, he'll have to be far more effective than his pathetic guards were. 3 hours ago at the Warsaw Royal Castle, the clock tower stands tall as the question is asked, which of the local warlords is causing the most trouble right now? Heavy boots click against the polished marble of the castle hallway. Yu Chanseok lets himself into the office, looking completely at ease despite the tension. Lee Si-yoon is buried in a mountain of paperwork. Without even looking up, she tells her visitor she's a bit busy at the moment. She finally looks over, telling him to keep it brief and get straight to the point. He doesn't waste any time. The descendants of Dangun are trying to seize control of the erosion source. That gets her attention immediately. She's stunned that he waited this long to mention what he heard back on Tsushima Island. Chanseok just gives her a flat look, waiting for the news to sink in. She sighs and starts shuffling through her documents, realizing he's already made up his mind about what to do next. He admits he'll never get along with those guys. They're just too weird for his taste. Si-yoon is just relieved he's actually making a decision for once. An intercom buzzes. Commander Lee Si-yoon is informed that Han Sang-ah has arrived to see her. Si-yoon notes that Sang-ah was right there with him during that mission together. Han Sang-ah enters the room, her expression looking quite grim. She's honest, the state of things in Warsaw was hard to believe, even seeing it with her own eyes. Si-yoon asks if Korea is really that oblivious to what's happening in other countries, especially her, the lady of Jumyang Group. Sang-ah looks down. If she weren't a hunter, she would have spent her whole life in the dark. She asks if there's anything they can do to help. Si-yoon's answer is cold. Nothing. It's a tragedy, but it's simply not their mission right now. Chan Seok listens as she tells them to focus on the task at hand. They're drowning in work and have no backup to spare. He raises a hand to cut in. He's got something to say about the plan. He tells them he's going to handle the negotiations with the German warlords himself. He'll do it his way. He thinks they should just skip the talk and crush those warlord bastards with pure force. Si-yoon knows that's not an option for her position. Diplomacy is a nightmare, but she has a public image to maintain. That's why he's going in as an unaffiliated hunter. He'll be the one to hold the whip this time. Si-yoon stares him down, weighing the risks of staying in Poland while he takes care of things. She realizes that despite how extreme it sounds, there really is no other way to get things moving. She asks if he'll be okay on his own as he starts to walk away. He promises to have it settled before the relief supplies are even finished being distributed. Sang-ah isn't convinced. She offers to go with him, worried about the danger. He tells her to stay put and focus on her training. He's already calling for a transport helicopter. With a confident smirk, he tells them he'll see them in Germany. An hour later, a massive explosion rocks a German facility as a helicopter circles overhead. The Kaiser warlords had no idea what was coming. The ground erupts in fire and stone, sending debris flying everywhere as the ambush begins. A soldier is caught in the shockwave, screaming as he's engulfed in the flare. They thought they could handle a single Korean hunter. The warlords figured they could drain any hunter's mana until they were helpless. It was a logical plan, but it didn't account for someone like him. Chan Seok drops into the middle of their base like a bomb, scattering the ranks. Their math only works on ordinary hunters. He gives them one final command: make a choice. He stands over a defeated guard, looking down at the group's leader standing in the distance. He asks if they'll settle this with words or fight to the end. Daniel Lewis, the leader of the Kaiser warlords, is in complete shock. He can't believe the guy is still moving. He panics and screams at his men, wondering what they're all doing just standing there. The soldiers snap to attention, chambering rounds and aiming their rifles on his command. Daniel roars for them to fire, his face twisted in desperation. But before a trigger can be pulled, Chan Seok is already there, lunging through the line. He grabs Daniel from behind, locking him in a chokehold. He tells the leader one last time, make a choice. Daniel Lewis looks like he's about to have a heart attack. He asks how Chan Seok plans on handling the consequences of this raid. The hunter just gives him a cold stare, clearly not bothered by the threat. The warlord is sweating through his uniform, realizing he's completely out of his league here. Chan Seok doesn't even blink as he gives his answer. He doesn't care about the fallout. One look from him is enough to make anyone second-guess their entire life. Inside the military tent, Daniel decides that talking is a lot safer than fighting this monster. Chan Seok takes a big gulp of the drink they offered him. He almost spits it back out. He was told it was cola, but the taste is completely wrong. Daniel can only watch, looking a bit embarrassed by the offering. He admits he hasn't had real cola in years, so they just drink whatever is easy to find. Germany is in rough shape, even worse than the situation back in Poland. Their base is a crumbling eyesore. Government support has vanished, and the power barely even works. Daniel finds the whole situation pathetic, seeing how far his country has fallen into ruin. Chan Seok sets the cup down and asks why they're refusing to cooperate. Daniel blames Restaurant, one of the Great Eight groups currently based in Italy. Their influence is spreading across Europe and North Africa, and it's putting a stranglehold on everyone. He explains that they're fighting a losing battle against the erosion zones while Ristorante pushes up from the south. They need that shield generator. Chanseok points out that the generator is still experimental and needs a stable place like the UK to collect data. Daniel looks down, realizing this isn't much of a negotiation. He's being cornered. The hunter's message is simple. If you want the generator, stop talking and start helping out. Daniel tries to act tough, asking why the guy is acting so high and mighty when they don't even have a choice. Chanseok grabs his glass and slams it onto the table. He crushes the glass in his bare hand, sending shards flying everywhere. Blood drips from his fist as he warns the old man that he wouldn't recommend testing his patience. Shaken by the display, Daniel finally asks what kind of cooperation he's looking for. Chanseok plays it off like he's just a middleman setting up the meeting. Daniel asks if the candy lady was the one who sent him here to do this. He laughs it off. Si-yoon is far too careful for this kind of thing. He just got impatient with how slow things were moving. Daniel tries to save face, asking if the hunter really thinks he can just stay here for free. Chanseok looks him dead in the eye, clearly unimpressed by the attempt to intimidate him. He tosses a single piece of candy onto the table, his lodging fee. It's a cola-flavored candy he worked hard to get from a slime. Daniel can't believe he's being serious. The warlord mutters that it must be nice for Koreans to be so carefree, while everyone else is struggling just to see tomorrow. Daniel looks at him, wondering what his next move is. Chanseok is already thinking ahead. Back with his allies, Lee Si-yoon asks if he actually has a plan for when this request is over. He admits that seeing the state of the world has really opened his eyes to how ruined everything has become. Whether it's Grade 1 erosion cores or the Great 8, he's done with the games. He's going to end them all. He tells Daniel that he'll end up thanking him in the long run. He's going to save the world. He's going to make sure they can all drink real cola again in a few years, just as a personal favor. With a smirk, he sets his sights on the bigger picture. Meanwhile, a crowd gathers in the square in front of the Warsaw Royal Castle. People line up for miles, waiting for the only source of sustenance they have left. The servers yell for the next person in line to step up. It's a never-ending cycle of misery. A thin, watery soup is poured into a bowl. It's a dismal meal, but they're told to wait their turn or lose out. A man stares down at his bowl of soup with a look of pure disgust and disappointment. He explodes in anger, shouting that the soup is nothing but flavored water and swearing at the guards responsible for the rations. One of the soldiers tells him to shut up and step back. The guards don't take kindly to the civilian's outburst. One of them authorizes the use of force to keep the peace. The man refuses to back down, shouting that the soldiers are no better than thugs. A guard levels his weapon, the click of the chamber echoing in the tense silence. A deafening gunshot rings out across the square, shocking everyone into silence for a split second. The crowd erupts into screams of terror as the man collapses. Someone cries out in horror, asking if the soldiers really killed him just for complaining about the food. A soldier quickly clarifies that the man isn't dead. They're using salt slugs, non-lethal rounds meant for crowd control. The guard explains that with everyone struggling, they have to ensure the portions are distributed fairly. He warns the crowd that any further rioting will be met with more salt rounds without hesitation. The crowd goes quiet for a moment, processing the warning. Salt rounds mean the guards won't actually kill them for acting out. The realization sparks a different, more desperate kind of panic. People begin rushing the food stands, screaming that they haven't eaten in days as the guards frantically call for backup. In a much quieter, though no less chaotic environment, the sound of phones ringing fills a cluttered office. Lee Si-yoon is buried under a mountain of paperwork. The reports are grim, dozens of injuries and over 20 cases of forged ration cards. They are hopelessly short-handed. A subordinate informs her that a priority message has just come in from the Kaiser warlords. She's stunned and tells them to patch it through immediately. She picks up the phone and identifies herself. A look of genuine surprise and relief crosses her face as she realizes Yu Chanseok actually succeeded in his mission. The word comes through officially. The Kaiser warlords have agreed to Janabi's request for full cooperation. In the ruins of Hamburg, Germany, the unlikely partnership begins to take shape. Daniel Lewis formally welcomes Lee Si-yoon to the city. though he can't help but comment on the strange and dangerous fellow she sent to handle the negotiations. Si-yoon remains professional, greeting him in return and thanking him for finally agreeing to the terms. While the official meeting takes place below, a silent observer watches the proceedings from high above the train station. Yu Chanseok sits perched on a high metal beam, his expression unreadable as he surveys the area from his vantage point. Han Sang-ah floats up to his level, startled to find him all the way up there. She asks what on earth he's doing. He explains that he's just scouting the perimeter to make sure nothing goes wrong. She informs him that Si-yoon is looking for him. Chanseok sighs and says he'll head over now, getting ready to move. But something suddenly catches his sharp eyes, stopping him in his tracks. The sun glints off the sharp angles of the city's clock tower in the distance. An unnatural, brilliant flash of light suddenly erupts from the side of the tower, as if something just entered this world. A figure is visible for only a fraction of a second before disappearing. Chanseok doesn't waste a heartbeat, diving off the beam to give chase. Han Sang-ah yells after him, asking where he's going. He lands on a high balcony with a heavy thud, his eyes darting around as he scans the area for the intruder. There is no one in sight, but the hunter is certain of what he saw. Someone was definitely right here just a moment ago. He notes that the intruder used mana to hide their presence and flee the moment they were spotted. However, the masking wasn't perfect. He can still detect a faint, glowing trail of mana lingering in the air. By following the trail, he's confident he can track the stranger down. He focuses his senses, narrowing down the target's location. The trail winds its way up through the structure, defying gravity. His position is the ceiling. He barely has a second to process the realization before a figure drops down directly above him. A massive blast of blue energy erupts as the attacker strikes, the sheer force of it rattling the entire building. The attack literally tears through the air, leaving a shimmering wake of mana behind it. This is no ordinary skill. Chanseok manages to dodge the strike, impressed by the technique. Tearing through space itself is a high-level feat. The attacker, hidden beneath a wide straw hat, is equally impressed. He hadn't expected the hunter to find his location so quickly. The man introduces himself as Seok Jo-heum, a descendant of Dangun. He states calmly that he must subdue Chanseok before he can depart. Chanseok isn't exactly shaking in his boots. He mocks the man's choice of attire, questioning what kind of look he's going for with the hanbok and the cane sword. Seok Jo-heum's grip tightens on his weapon as he delivers a stern correction. It is not a simple cane sword. With a sharp movement, he draws the blade. It is a changpojum, and it hums with a lethal, shimmering energy as he prepares to strike again. A massive strike from Seok Jo-heum's blade shatters the stonework of the building, sending debris flying in every direction. Chanseok grunts as he's knocked back by the concussive force of the attack, his feet skidding across the roof. He doesn't have a second to breathe before the next slash comes, the razor-sharp edge of the changpojum whistling through the air. The two warriors become a blur of motion, their clashing weapons sending sparks into the sky. Chanseok lands with a heavy thud, his eyes never leaving his opponent. Despite the ferocity of the assault, the hunter is untouchable. He dodges every strike with a calm, practiced precision that clearly frustrates his foe. Seok Jo-heum speaks from beneath his hat, his voice eerily calm as he tells the young man that he'll have to try much harder than that. Chanseok's expression shifts. He's starting to realize that there's something more to this fight than meets the eye. A surge of violet mana erupts around the older man, shimmering with a strange, unnatural light. The air itself seems to vibrate with the sheer pressure of the energy being released. Chanseok launches himself forward, bringing his polearm down in a strike designed to crush anything in its path. The light of the attack illuminates Seok Jo-heum's face, showing a man who is completely in control of the situation. Suddenly, the intruder's form begins to flicker and distort, splitting apart like a reflection on water. Chanseok's eyes widen in genuine shock as he sees the man split into two identical copies. The two figures speak in perfect unison, declaring that the hunter will never be able to even lay a finger on them. They move in perfect sync, their combined presence filling the rooftop with an overwhelming sense of danger. The hunter's gaze is sharp, his mind already working to dissect the mechanics of the clone technique. A flurry of attacks comes from both clones simultaneously, a web of lethal energy that leaves no room for escape. Even in the middle of the onslaught, Chanseok remains composed. He's already identified the two key secrets of his opponent's power. First, the use of physical clones to create openings and confuse the target. And second, the fact that when these clones merge, the man's speed and power are temporarily amplified to extreme levels. Seok Joheum boastfully claims that there is nothing Chanseok can do to stop him. The hunter's only thought is that the man couldn't be more wrong. Chanseok watches as the swordsman's clones merge back into a single body. The speed boost from the merge is immediate. Chanseok figures it's some kind of innate ability. But the real headache is that phasing technique. Any physical strike just passes through him like he's a ghost. Seok Joheum is feeling pretty confident, promising that his next strike will be the last. Chanseok can tell this guy has never had his little trick countered before. Unfortunately for him, he's up against a guy with 20 years of experience dealing with displacement magic. He's seen this exact skill in another world before. Monsters there used to displace their bodies into another space to dodge everything. It made them nearly impossible to put down. Other hunters would panic, unable to land a single hit. Swords and spears would just slice through empty air. No matter how hard they fought, nothing was working. The secret is that they aren't actually intangible. They just use mana to shift their physical bodies elsewhere. So the real question is how to get around that displacement. Skills like this trigger at the exact millisecond they're attacked, matching the incoming speed. If you can match that timing perfectly, Joheum prepares to lunge. Chanseok just needs to recalibrate his attack speed to catch the window when the phasing deactivates. Joheum's eyes go wide in total shock. He drops to the ground, blood spraying from a clean hit. He can't process how this is even possible. With that speed, he should have phased right through the spear. He realizes Chanseok is no ordinary hunter. Chanseok steps forward to finish it, but he suddenly senses a shift in the air. He looks toward the city. A massive explosion rocks the northern outskirts of Hamburg. Chanseok's eyes narrow as the flames light up the sky. Joheum smirks, thinking his backup just changed the game. Suddenly, Chanseok's radio crackles to life. It's an emergency order to retreat immediately. A sarin gas bomb was just dropped. Even a tiny amount is enough to shut down the nervous system. It's a chemical weapon, so lethal it's been banned from history. Once it spreads, the entire area will turn into a graveyard. Chanseok takes in the grim news. He tells the command center he's on his way back. He launches himself into the air, abandoning the duel. As he sprints across the rooftops, he wonders why they didn't hit Hamburg directly. It feels like a distraction. The gas is expected to cover the city in 15 minutes. Time is running out. The train is scheduled to leave in 5 minutes. If the relief supplies get contaminated, it's all over. He scans the area, surprised that no other enemies have tried to intercept him yet. He hears that Lee Si-yoon is the only one left at the station holding them off. The pieces finally click into place. He's figured out their real goal. They're trying to separate Si-yoon from the train to leave the shield generator vulnerable. He asks who she's fighting, and the answer comes back, an elite archer. Amidst the chaos at the station, Sang-ah recognizes the hooded archer from the Tsushima incident. Chanseok's gaze is sharp as he realizes the enemy is using the massive gas attack as tactical cover. The archer fires a massive energy shot that completely levels a section of the terminal. Si-yoon is visibly bloodied, but doesn't let her focus slip for a second. She swings her greatsword, unleashing a massive shockwave of ice and debris to clear her path. The archer leaps through the air with supernatural speed, drawing another glowing arrow. A blinding flash of light erupts as their powers clash, sending shockwaves across the platform. Si-yoon looks surprised as her defenses are nearly breached by the sheer power of the shot. Dozens of light arrows rain down from above, pinning her in place. The floor around her is shredded by the relentless barrage. She braces herself, her body glowing with a cold, frigid aura to tank the next hit. A technician screams that the relief supplies are finally finished loading. He urges the last of the hunters to board before they're left behind in the gas. The train begins to pick up speed, slowly pulling away from the ruined station. Inside, the staff confirms that all essential personnel have made it on board. The wheels screech as the locomotive pushes for maximum velocity to outrun the gas. The hunters inside are visibly shaken by how close they came to a total disaster. They watch the explosions lighting up the sky through the windows as they leave Hamburg. One of them asks who that archer could possibly be. They saw Si-yoon getting pushed to her absolute limit back there. The realization that their strongest fighter is pinned down makes the atmosphere inside tense. A sudden metallic thud from the ceiling cuts through the silence of the car. Something or someone just landed on top of the train. Chan-seok drops through the ceiling hatch, looking surprisingly calm. He's greeted with a mix of shock and relief from the hunters. But he tells them to drop the celebration. Si-yoon has been lured into a trap. The train barrels onto a high-speed rail bridge as it leaves the city behind. Chan-seok grabs his radio, ordering every hunter to immediately guard the shield generator. Back at the station, the smoke clears as Si-yoon maintains her stance. She admits to herself that her opponent is on a completely different level. She wonders if this guy is the leader of the descendants of Dangun. The archer praises her, admitting he didn't expect a 10th-rank hunter to survive this long. Si-yoon smirks through the pain, telling him his plan is a total failure. The archer just stares back at her with glowing red eyes. He tells her she's wrong. The moment she was separated from the train, their victory was decided. As the train disappears into the distance, she's left isolated and vulnerable. The prototype's main protection is gone, and the real ambush is only just beginning. Vivacious and ready for combat, Seo Yeonju and Lee Ha-yeon are already waiting on the tracks ahead. Chan-seok gets a radio report about a suspicious group blocking the bridge ahead. It's an ambush with a whole squad of masked fighters ready for action. A blade is drawn as things are about to get messy. High above on the train roof, Chan-seok orders all hunters to prepare for battle immediately. The fight breaks out, and Chan-seok finds himself surrounded as the masked attackers close in. A woman with a massive geum on her back greets him by name, making it clear they know exactly who he is. Chan-seok isn't impressed, simply asking her how she knows him. She says her bosses wanted him captured alive, but she's got a look in her eyes that says she doesn't care. The girl admits she's not great at taking prisoners, and since her elders aren't around, she's doing things her way. She doesn't waste any more time and starts playing a deadly tune on her instrument. Chan-seok realizes she's actually using sound as a weapon through that geum. She moves like a blur, the power of her aura cracking the very ground beneath her feet. He keeps his eyes on her, bracing for the next move. She reaches out, ready to unleash another blast. A massive shockwave of sound erupts, slamming into Chan-seok with enough force to distort the air around him. He takes the hit, thinking to himself that while it's annoying, it's nothing he can't handle. That's when a guy with a giant cleaver and ritual bells decides to join the party. This is Lee Ha-yeon, and he's clearly looking forward to showing off his ritualistic technique. Ha-yeon begins a frantic ritual dance, swinging his bells and blade in a wild rhythm. A hail of sound bass strikes rains down, pushing Chan-seok back as the train speeds along. Yeonju keeps up the pressure from a distance, hitting another chord on her instrument. Chan-seok realizes that Ha-yeon's dance was actually more than just a ritual. It was a buff skill, amping up their power as they continue their assault. Yeonju's eyes flare with confidence as she thinks she's finally got him. A massive shockwave rings out, so loud that even the nearby grunts have to cover their ears in pain. Chan-seok wipes a bit of blood from his mouth, looking more serious now. He covers one ear, clearly getting tired of the constant noise. He looks right at them and tells them flat out that their playing is absolute garbage. Yeonju just laughs, telling him he can struggle all he wants, but he'll never be able to block out sound. Chan-seok's hand starts to crackle with a dark, red energy. He calmly asks how they'll feel about his next move. He activates his paradox flame, and a massive surge of power washes over the entire bridge. Yeonju is confused, trying to signal Haeun for their next attack. She suddenly freezes, realizing something is very, very wrong. She opens her mouth to shout, but no sound comes out at all. Chanseok watches her panicking, satisfied that his trick worked exactly as expected. He points out that she doesn't seem used to fighting on a completely silent battlefield. He moves through the dead air like a shadow, wreathed in purple flames. The paradox flame ripples outward, erasing every single vibration in the vicinity. Yeonju starts to lose it, frantically looking around for where he disappeared to. She tries to reassure herself that it's still 2 against 1, and they can still take him. But then she looks at Haeun and sees he's sweating buckets, looking completely terrified. Haeun realizes with a shock that he's not the one doing the ambushing anymore. A massive spear strike comes crashing down toward him. He desperately tries to recall the plan he made with Seo Yeonju. They were supposed to capture Chanseok alive, no matter what. They were even willing to sacrifice their lives to see the mission through. Haeun screams for Chanseok to stop as he prepares a desperate defense. But he's already coughing up blood, his body barely holding together. The sheer pressure of Chanseok's aura is unlike anything he's ever felt. Chanseok calmly asks if Lee Haeun is the name he goes by. A violent burst of mana ripples through the air. Haeun throws out his hand, trying to manifest a sealing technique. After taking a brutal beating, a frustrated Yeonju curses at Haeun for ruining everything by not using the seal earlier. Haeun defends himself, arguing that Chanseok is simply too much of a wild card. Still, he believes he has finally managed to trap the guy inside his barrier. Haeun is certain this absolute barrier will be enough to hold even a monster like Chanseok. But Chanseok's presence begins to warp the space, his eyes glowing with a terrifying light. Haeun's confidence shatters as he realizes the barrier is about to break. Panicking, he tells Yeonju to get up so they can grab the shield generator and run. A brutal strike connects, tearing right through his defenses. Haeun is sent reeling, coughing up even more blood. Chanseok looks down at them, asking who gave them permission to just walk away. Haeun realizes they've encountered a being far beyond their wildest imagination. In a moment of pure desperation, he screams for Seo Yeonju to run away while she still can. Chanseok just mockingly encourages her to try and run. And he's not planning on letting Haeun off the hook either. He demands they leave the shield generator behind before they even think about retreating. His cold, dead eyes make it clear that no one is going anywhere. Meanwhile, back at Hamburg Central Station, the city is a disaster zone. Lee Si-yoon is bloodied and gasping for air after a brutal fight. Her opponent, the hooded archer, slowly lowers his weapon. He abruptly decides to end the confrontation right then and there. He starts rambling about Korean superiority and how proud he is of Si-yoon. She's not buying it, asking if he actually believes in that Hwanguk nonsense. The Hwanguk theory is a bizarre claim about a primordial Korean empire that supposedly ruled Eurasia. It's full of wild ideas about ancient submarines and phones from 60,000 years ago. It's the exact kind of propaganda the descendants of Dangun used to rally their followers. The archer admits he doesn't believe a single word of it. Si-yoon is completely thrown off by his honesty. He explains that the truth of the story doesn't actually matter to him. What matters is that his followers believe it, giving them a cause to fight for. To him, faith is a tool that doesn't require any actual proof to be effective. He tells her she should just believe as well, right before he vanishes. Si-yoon can only watch him go, shaken by the absolute madness of the people they're up against. Lee Si-yoon lowers her head, gripping her weapon tightly as the silence of the battlefield settles around her. She stands alone amidst the shattered remains of the station, exhaling a long, weary breath into the cold air.